My parents sold my college fund to bail out my felon golden brother, so I disappeared for 10 years. But now, after they found out I am well off, they want my help. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but after everything that's happened in the last few months, I need to get it off my chest. Maybe some of you will understand. Maybe you'll think I'm heartless. Either way, here it is. I'm 28 male now, but this story starts when I was 18. My parents had two kids, me and my brother Tyler, who's 3 years older. From the day I could form memories, it was crystal clear who the favorite was. Tyler could do no wrong in their eyes, even when he was doing everything wrong. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. When Tyler got his first car at 16, it was a brand new Honda Civic that Dad co-signed for. When I turned 16, they handed me the keys to Tyler's old beater that he'd already put 80,000 miles on and crashed twice. When Tyler wanted to play football, they bought him all the gear, drove to every game, and had his jersey framed when the season ended. When I made honor roll 3 semesters in a row, Mom said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from her phone. But the real difference wasn't in what they gave us. It was in what they excused. Tyler started getting in trouble in middle school. Small stuff at first. Skipping class, talking back to teachers, getting suspended. Mom and Dad would march into the principal's office like Tyler was the victim of some grand conspiracy. "He's just spirited," Mom would say. "Boys will be boys," Dad would add. Meanwhile, I got grounded for a week when I forgot to take out the trash. High school was when Tyler really hit his stride with being a complete screw-up. He got caught with weed sophomore year. Not just smoking it, but selling it in the school parking lot to freshmen. Dad hired a lawyer and somehow convinced the school board that Tyler was just helping other kids feel more comfortable in a new environment. The lawyer cost $3,000. Junior year brought the vandalism arrest. Tyler didn't just spray paint the rival school's mascot. He broke into their trophy case and spray painted every single trophy, then took selfies next to his artwork and posted them on Instagram. The school district demanded $8,000 in damages. Dad hired an even better lawyer for $5,000 and somehow got it reduced to community service, which Tyler never completed. But my personal favorite was the incident that almost got him expelled senior year. Tyler threw a party while our parents were visiting my sick grandfather. Not just any party, he charged admission, hired a DJ, and turned our house into a nightclub. The neighbors called the cops after someone drove through their fence trying to park. When the police showed up, they found 3 passed-out minors, a flooded basement from someone breaking the water heater, and Tyler passed out on the roof with no memory of how he got there. The property damage was over $12,000. Dad took out a second mortgage to cover it. Senior year, he barely graduated because he spent more time partying than studying, but somehow my parents still threw him a massive graduation party and bragged to everyone about how proud they were. They rented out the VFW hall and invited 200 people to celebrate Tyler overcoming his challenges. I got a $20 gift card to Barnes & Noble when I graduated with honors. Through all of this, I was grinding. I worked part-time at a grocery store, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and saved every penny for college. See, my grandparents on my mom's side had set up education savings accounts for both Tyler and me when we were little. Nothing huge, but by the time I was 18, mine had grown to about $23,000. Combined with what I'd saved from work and some academic scholarships I'd earned, I could afford to go to a decent state school for computer science. Tyler's education fund? Gone by his sophomore year of high school, spent on lawyers and court fees. But that was fine, according to my parents, because Tyler wasn't college material anyway, and would probably go into business with Dad's construction company. What they didn't mention was that Dad's construction business was barely staying afloat because Tyler kept costing them contracts. Hard to maintain professional relationships when your son shows up to job sites drunk, starts fights with subcontractors, and steals materials to sell for drug money. Yeah, that last part came out during his second arrest junior year. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the night that changed everything. It was March of my senior year. I'd just gotten accepted to state with a partial academic scholarship. I was over the moon. Finally, my hard work was paying off. I was going to study computer science, get out of this toxic house, and build something of my own. I came home from my shift at the grocery store around 10 p.m. to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with Tyler. He looked like hell. Bloodshot eyes, stubble, that particular shade of pale that comes from spending 48 hours in county lockup. This was his third DUI, and this time he'd wrapped his car around a telephone pole. Thank God he didn't kill anyone. But the car was totaled, and his blood alcohol was nearly twice the legal limit. Mom was crying. Dad was pacing. And Tyler was sitting there with this defiant look on his face, like the world owed him something. "We need to talk," Dad said when he saw me. I sat down, still in my grocery store uniform that smelled like the deli counter. "Tyler's in some serious trouble," Dad began. "This third DUI, it's a felony. He's looking at real prison time unless we get him the best lawyer in the county." "Okay," I said, not sure why this involved me. "What does his lawyer cost?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look. That should have been my first warning. $25,000, Dad said quietly. The number hit me like a slap. $25,000. More than my entire college fund. "That's a lot," I managed. "We don't have it," Mom said through tears. "The business is struggling. We've already mortgaged the house twice for Tyler's other legal fees, and, I prompted, though some sick part of me already knew where this was going. Dad cleared his throat. "We need to use your college fund." The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. The "just kidding." Anything to indicate this was some kind of horrible joke. "My college fund," I repeated slowly. "It's just temporary," Mom rushed to explain. "Once Tyler gets back on his feet, once the business picks up, we'll pay it back with interest. We promise." Tyler finally spoke up. "Come on, little brother. Family's got to stick together, right? Besides, you're smart. You'll figure out another way to pay for school. I'm looking at 5 years in prison if we don't fix this." I looked at this person who shared my DNA, this 21-year-old who had never held a job for more than 3 months, who had cost our family tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and damaged property, who was sitting there acting like I owed him something. "No," I said. Dad's face darkened. "Excuse me?" I said no. "That money is for my education. I've worked for 4 years saving every penny, maintained perfect grades, earned scholarships. Tyler made his choices. I'm not paying for them. What happened next will be burned into my memory forever." My mother, the woman who raised me, looked me dead in the eye and said, "How can you be so selfish? Your brother needs help." "What about what I need?" I shot back. "What about my future? My dreams? You'll figure it out," Dad said dismissively. "You always do. Tyler doesn't have your advantages." "What advantages?" "Being responsible? Working hard? Following the law?" Tyler slammed his fist on the table. "God, you're such a self-righteous little prick. You think you're better than me because you get good grades and work at a grocery store? I think I'm better than you because I don't drive drunk and endanger innocent people," I snapped back. That's when Dad lost it. He got up and jabbed his finger in my face. "That money is in an account with your mother's name on it. We're going to use it whether you like it or not. Tyler is family, and family takes care of family." "What am I then?" I asked quietly. No one answered. The next morning, I went to the bank with Mom. She withdrew every penny of my college fund. $23,416. Money that represented 4 years of my grandparents' love, 4 years of my sacrifice, 4 years of hope for a better future. Gone. Just like that. I asked Mom one more time in the bank parking lot. "Are you sure about this?" She couldn't even look at me. "Tyler needs us right now. You'll understand when you're older." That afternoon, I walked into my guidance counselor's office and withdrew my acceptance to state. I told her there had been a family financial emergency. She was devastated. She'd worked hard to help me get those scholarships. When I got home, I went straight to my room and started packing. I didn't have much. 4 years of working part-time doesn't leave much room for accumulating possessions when you're saving every dollar for college. Tyler was in the living room, playing video games like nothing had happened. "Thanks, bro," he called out, without taking his eyes off the screen. "I'll pay you back, I promise." I didn't respond. At dinner that night, Dad said, "So, what's your plan now for school?" "I'll figure it out," I said, throwing his words back at him. Mom looked uncomfortable. "Maybe you could take a gap year, save up again?" "Sure," I said. "I'll just save up another $25,000 while working at a grocery store for $8.50 an hour. Should only take about 6 years if I don't eat or pay rent." "Don't be dramatic," Dad said. That night, I made a decision that would define the next decade of my life. I was done being the responsible one who got screwed over for being responsible. I was done being the afterthought child. I was done with all of it. I had about $3,200 in my checking account, money I'd been saving for textbooks and dorm room supplies. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a one-way Greyhound ticket to San Francisco and maybe a month of survival if I was careful. I left on a Tuesday morning while everyone was out. Mom was at her book club, Dad was at work, and Tyler was probably sleeping off another hangover. I packed everything that mattered into 2 duffel bags, left my house key on my desk, and walked out of that house forever. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just disappeared. The first 2 years in San Francisco were the hardest of my life. I couch surfed, stayed in hostels, slept in my car, an $800 Honda with 200,000 miles, when I couldn't afford anything else. That car, by the way, was a special kind of nightmare. The heater only worked when you hit the dashboard in exactly the right spot. The passenger door had to be opened from the outside, and it made a sound like a dying whale every time I started it. But it was mine, which was more than I could say about anything else in my life at that point. I worked every job you can imagine. Dishwasher at a 24-hour diner where the cook taught me more curse words in Spanish than I knew existed in English. Dog walker for tech bros who paid me $50 to walk their designer dogs while they worked from their $4,000 a month apartments. Delivery driver for a restaurant that exclusively served $18 artisanal grilled cheese sandwiches to people too drunk to cook. Sometimes I'd work 2 or 3 jobs at once, just to afford a room in a house with 5 other people. My living situation was a rotating cast of characters that would make a sitcom writer weep with joy. There was Marcus, the aspiring musician who practiced his experimental jazz fusion at 3 a.m. Sarah, the grad student who labeled every single item in the shared fridge with her name and the date, including individual baby carrots. And my personal favorite, Dave, who was convinced he was going to get rich selling custom t-shirts with inspirational quotes he wrote himself. His bestseller? Life is like a taco. You gotta hold it together, or everything falls apart. He sold exactly 1 shirt, to his mom. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom when you're 18. You're young enough to bounce back, and desperate enough to work harder than anyone else. During my lunch breaks and after work, I'd go to the public library and teach myself to code. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, Java, whatever free resources I could find online. I spent every spare moment learning, building little projects, failing, starting over. After about 8 months of this, I got my first tech job, technical support specialist, at a startup that made software for restaurants. It paid $35,000 a year, which felt like winning the lottery after months of making minimum wage. The startup was classic Silicon Valley chaos. 25 people crammed into an office space meant for 10, working 80-hour weeks on energy drinks and the promise of equity that might be worth something someday. The office fridge was perpetually stocked with exactly 3 items: expired yogurt, someone's leftover Thai food that had achieved sentience, and about 47 different varieties of kombucha that nobody actually wanted to drink, but everyone pretended to love. But I loved it. For the first time in my life, I was around people who valued intelligence and hard work over family connections and sob stories. My coworkers didn't care that I grew up in Ohio or that my brother was a mess. They cared that I could fix their server crashes at 2 a.m. and still show up the next morning with ideas for improving the user interface. The CEO, Marcus, had this habit of calling emergency all-hands meetings at random times to discuss paradigm shifts and synergistic opportunities. Most of these meetings could have been emails, but Marcus was 26 and convinced he was the next Steve Jobs. He wore the same black t-shirt every day. He claimed to own 30 identical shirts and insisted that our office needed creative energy, which translated to beanbags instead of chairs and a broken ping pong table that doubled as our only conference table. I absorbed everything. I learned the business side, the technical side, the customer side. When the company's only developer quit after 6 months, something about Marcus's tendency to change the entire product roadmap every Tuesday. I volunteered to take over his projects, even though I'd never built commercial software before. I worked nights and weekends teaching myself advanced programming concepts, studying the codebase, fixing bugs, and building new features. The CEO, a 26-year-old Stanford dropout named Marcus, noticed my work. After about a year, he pulled me aside and said, "I don't know what your background is, but you're the most driven person I've ever met. How would you feel about leading our entire technical development?" At 20 years old, I became the CTO of a 50-person company. That startup eventually failed. Most do. But by then I had real experience and a network. My next job was at a more established company, building mobile apps for enterprise clients. The pay was better, the equity was better, and I was learning about parts of the tech industry I'd never seen before. But the real opportunity came in 2018, when I was 24. I'd been watching the explosion of remote work tools and noticed something that everyone else seemed to be missing. All these platforms were focused on video calls and messaging, but nobody was solving the real problem of project collaboration for technical teams. I started building a prototype in my spare time, a platform that would integrate code repositories, project management, real-time collaboration, and deployment tools into one seamless experience. It was basically trying to replace 5 different tools that every development team was using separately. The more I worked on it, the more I realized I was onto something big. I quit my job in January 2019 and spent 6 months building the MVP with my savings. When I ran out of money, I freelanced during the day to pay rent and coded at night. I lived on ramen and coffee, slept maybe 4 hours a night, and probably wasn't the best company for anyone during those months. But by July 2019, I had something that worked. I called it DevStream. The first version was rough, but it solved a real problem. I reached out to every developer I'd ever met and asked them to try it. Within a month, I had 200 users. Within 3 months, I had 2,000. By the end of 2019, I had 15,000 users and had processed my first revenue. That's when the venture capital firms started calling. I'll spare you the details of fundraising. It's about as fun as it sounds. But by March 2020, I'd raised $2.5 million in Series A funding. The timing was perfect. COVID hit, remote work exploded, and suddenly every company in the world needed better tools for distributed teams. DevStream went from 15,000 users to 150,000 users in 6 months. By the end of 2020, we were at 500,000 users, and I was hiring employees faster than I could onboard them. By 2021, we were doing $50 million in annual revenue. By 2022, we were profitable, and I was fielding acquisition offers. I didn't sell. DevStream was my baby, the thing I'd built from nothing when I had nothing. Instead, I raised a Series B round that valued the company at $400 million. And me? The kid whose college fund got stolen to bail out his drunk brother? I was worth about $200 million on paper. But here's the thing about success. It doesn't feel like you think it will when you're dreaming about it from the bottom. It's gratifying, sure, but mostly it just feels like more work and more responsibility. I was proud of what I'd built, but I wasn't doing it to prove anything to my family anymore. By that point, they felt like characters from someone else's life story. Which brings me to last month. I was in my office in downtown San Francisco, reviewing quarterly numbers with my CFO, when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's a call for you," she said. "Someone claiming to be your mother." I hadn't spoken to my family in over 9 years. Not a word. They had no idea where I was, what I was doing, or if I was even alive. I'd changed my phone number, moved multiple times, and built my entire adult life from scratch without the minute. "Tell her I'm not available," I said. But the calls kept coming. Every day for a week. Sometimes mom, sometimes dad, once Tyler himself. I ignored them all. Then the Forbes article came out. 30 under 30. The dropout CEO who's revolutionizing remote work. They'd done a whole profile on me and DevStream. Photos, background story, the works. They mentioned that I was from a small town in Ohio, that I'd dropped out of college plans to move to San Francisco, that I'd built a $400 million company from scratch. The story went viral in tech circles. Within 24 hours, it was being shared all over social media. That's how my family found me. The next morning, my assistant informed me that there were 3 people in the lobby claiming to be my family and demanding to see me. I'll be honest. Part of me was curious. It had been 9 years. What did they want? What did they look like now? Had Tyler finally grown up? Had my parents ever wondered if they'd made the right choice? "Send them up," I told her. 5 minutes later, my office door opened and my family walked in. They looked older, obviously. Dad had gone gray and put on weight. Mom had more wrinkles and was wearing clothes that looked like she'd picked them up at Target. And Tyler looked exactly like what he was. A 30-year-old man who'd never had to grow up. Scruffy, out of shape, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down that probably came from Mom's last-minute attempt to make him look presentable. They stood there gaping at my office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, expensive furniture, walls covered with awards and patents. This wasn't the life of someone who'd figured it out after having his college fund stolen. This was the life of someone who'd succeeded beyond their wildest imagination. "My God," Mom whispered. "Is this all yours?" "It's my company, yes," I said, not getting up from behind my desk. "What do you want?" Dad cleared his throat. We read the article. We had no idea you were doing so well." "You had no idea I was doing anything," I corrected. "You never bothered to find out." "We tried," Mom said quickly. "After you left, we tried to find you. We filed a missing persons report. We hired a private investigator." "For how long?" Silence. "How long did you look for me?" I pressed. "About 6 months," Dad admitted. "The investigator said you'd probably surface when you were ready, and we couldn't afford to keep paying him." "Right. You couldn't afford it. Needed that money for Tyler's next legal bill, I'm sure." Tyler finally spoke up. "Come on, man. That's not fair. We were worried sick about you." I laughed. Actually laughed. Worried sick? Tyler, you thanked me for giving up my college fund and then played video games. You were worried about your next high, not about me. The room went quiet again. Through the windows, I could see San Francisco bustling below us. People heading to work, building their lives, chasing their dreams. Just like I'd done. We'd like to explain, Mom said softly. Explain what? How you stole my future to bail out your golden child? How you chose his comfort over my dreams? How you never once asked if I was okay with sacrificing my education for his legal fees? We were going to pay you back, Dad protested. When? It's been almost 10 years. Have you paid me back? More silence. How is Tyler doing, by the way? I asked. Did that expensive lawyer work out? Did he turn his life around? Get sober? Find a career? I already knew the answer from their faces. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. I've had some setbacks, but I'm doing better now. I've been clean for 6 months. Congratulations. What about employment? I'm between jobs right now. For how long? About 8 months. So you've been unemployed longer than you've been clean. That's progress, I guess. Mom looked like she was about to cry. We know we made mistakes. We know we hurt you, but you're our son, and we've missed you every single day. Missed me so much that you gave up looking for me after 6 months. We didn't know what else to do, she whispered. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had given me everything my family never could. Opportunity, merit-based success, people who valued what you contributed, not who you were related to. Why are you here? I asked without turning around. We want to reconnect, Dad said. We want you back in our lives. We want to be a family again. I turned around and really looked at them. These 3 people who'd shaped my childhood, who'd made me feel worthless and invisible, who'd taught me that love was conditional and families had favorites. What's the financial situation at home? I asked. Dad blinked. What? Your finances. Tyler's unemployed. You're both in your 60s. The construction business is probably struggling. What's your situation? We're managing, Mom said carefully. How's Tyler's housing situation? I pressed. Still living with you? Temporarily, Tyler muttered. How temporarily? 6 months? 2 years? 5 years? It's complicated, Dad said. I nodded. And you saw the Forbes article about me being worth $200 million and thought, finally, our ship has come in. That's not why we're here, Mom said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Isn't it? You didn't wonder about me for 9 years, but a magazine mentions I'm wealthy, and suddenly you need to reconnect. You couldn't afford a private investigator to find your missing son, but you could afford plane tickets to San Francisco. When you discovered your missing son had money, Tyler's temper flared. Some things never change. Look, we get it. You're successful now. You don't need us. But we're still your family. Are we? I asked. Because families don't steal from each other. Families don't abandon each other. Families don't choose favorites and leave the other kid to figure it out alone. We never abandoned you, Mom protested. You took away my future for Tyler's convenience. What would you call that? Dad stepped forward. We made a mistake. We know that now. But Tyler was looking at prison time, and I was looking at a lost education. But only one of those things mattered to you. We thought you'd bounce back, Dad said desperately. You were always so capable, so smart. We knew you'd be fine. I was fine. No thanks to you. But being fine and being family are 2 different things. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic below. Finally, Mom played her last card. We love you. We've always loved you. We know we made mistakes, but you're our son. Doesn't that count for something? I studied her face, looking for sincerity, for real remorse, for any indication that this was about more than money. What I saw was desperation. How much do you need? I asked quietly. All 3 of them looked at each other. I'm sorry, Dad said. You didn't come here just to reconnect. You came here because you need money. Tyler's probably racked up more legal bills, or medical bills, or gambling debts. Your retirement savings are gone. The house is mortgaged. You're looking at bankruptcy or worse. So how much do you need? The silence stretched on forever. Tyler broke first. Things have been rough since Dad's accident. What accident? He fell off a roof last year, Mom explained. Hurt his back. He can't work construction anymore. Workers' comp isn't covering everything, and the medical bills. How much? I repeated. $80,000, Dad whispered. Between the medical debt and what we owe on the house and Tyler's legal fees from his last arrest. His last arrest? I thought he was clean. He is clean, Tyler said defensively. The arrest was from before. Something finally caught up with me. I walked back to my desk and sat down. These 3 people, looking at me with hope and desperation, waiting for me to solve their problems with my checkbook. Do you know what $80,000 is to me now? I asked. They shook their heads. It's about 6 hours of DevStream's revenue. It's what I spend on coffee for the office in 4 months. It's less than I paid for the watch I'm wearing. Their eyes lit up with hope. But do you know what $25,000 was to me when I was 18? I continued. The hope started to fade. It was everything. It was my future. It was 4 years of my grandparents' love and sacrifice. It was my chance to become something more than the invisible kid from Ohio. And you gave it away without a second thought. We were desperate, Mom pleaded. So was I. But nobody cared about my desperation. I opened my laptop and pulled up DevStream's bank accounts. Numbers that would make them dizzy. Money I'd earned by working 80-hour weeks, sleeping on friends' couches, teaching myself skills that school never could have given me anyway. I could write you a check right now that would solve all your problems, I said. I could pay off your house, Tyler's legal bills, Dad's medical debt, and give you enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. They held their breath. But I'm not going to. Tyler exploded first. Are you fucking kidding me? We're your family. No, Tyler. Families support each other. Families believe in each other. Families don't steal from each other to bail out the family screw-up for the 12th time. That was 10 years ago, he shouted. And what have you done in those 10 years? What have you built? What have you contributed? What have you learned from all those expensive lessons my college fund paid for? He had no answer. I turned to my parents. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not that you took my money. Money can be replaced. It's that you never believed in me. You were so sure Tyler was worth investing in, and I was just the responsible one who'd figure it out, that you never stopped to consider what I might become if given the chance. We believe in you now, Mom said through tears. Now that it benefits you to believe in me. Now that I can write checks. But where was that belief when I was 17 and working 2 jobs to save for college? Where was it when I was getting straight A's while Tyler was getting arrested? Dad tried one more time. We can't change the past, but we can be a family going forward. I shook my head. No, we can't. Because you haven't learned anything. You're not here because you're proud of what I've accomplished, or because you've realized you were wrong. You're here because you need something from me. What would it take? Mom asked desperately. What would we have to do to earn your forgiveness? I thought about it for a long moment. Go back in time and choose differently. Believe in me when it mattered. Support my dreams instead of destroying them. Love me for who I was, not for what I could do for Tyler. We can't do that, she whispered. No, you can't. Just like I can't pretend that the last 10 years of my life happened because you believed in me instead of in spite of your lack of belief. I walked to my office door and opened it. I think we're done here. Tyler made one last desperate play. You know what? Maybe it's better this way. Maybe you're right to cut us out. You've turned into exactly the kind of selfish, cold person who puts money over family. I'm glad we took your college fund. You would have just turned into an asshole anyway. I smiled. Actually smiled. Tyler, I had nothing when you took that money. I slept in my car. I lived on ramen noodles. I worked 3 jobs just to afford a shared bedroom with 4 strangers. And I was still happier than I ever was living in that house with you. Because you got lucky with some stupid app. No, because I got away from people who made me feel worthless. Success was just a bonus. They filed out slowly. Mom looked back once from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. I hope someday you can forgive us, she said. I already have, I told her. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust, and it doesn't mean money. After they left, I stood at my window for a long time, watching the city below. My assistant knocked and came in. How did it go? She asked gently. She'd worked for me for 2 years and had never seen me rattled by anything. Like I expected, I said. They needed money, not a relationship. I'm sorry. I turned back to my desk, to the company I'd built, to the life I'd created from nothing. Don't be, I said. I'm not. That was 3 weeks ago. They've tried calling a few more times, but I haven't answered. Tyler sent a long email that I deleted without reading. Mom tried reaching out through DevStream's customer service, which was honestly impressive in its desperation. Update. It's been 2 months since I posted this, and wow, I didn't expect it to blow up like it did. Thank you to everyone who shared their own family stories. It helped me realize I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. A few people asked for an update, so here's what's happened. Tyler got arrested again last month. Another DUI, plus possession charges. Apparently he's been using again for months, not just 6 like he claimed. Mom called DevStream's main line trying to reach me, begging me to help with another lawyer. I didn't take the call. Dad's medical bills have gotten worse. My cousin, Mom's nephew, reached out on Facebook to let me know Dad might lose the house. He wasn't asking for money, just thought I should know. I appreciated the heads up, but my answer is still no. The hardest part is that some people in my extended family think I'm heartless. My aunt posted something on Facebook about how blood is thicker than water, and family should always come first. A few cousins have unfriended me on social media, but here's what I've realized. The people who are angry at me for not helping are the same people who never helped me when I needed it. They all knew how my family treated me growing up. They all watched Tyler get chance after chance while I was ignored. None of them spoke up then, and none of them offered to help when I was sleeping in my car at 18. It's easy to be generous with other people's money and other people's forgiveness. The good news is that cutting ties completely has been liberating. I changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment, and made it clear to anyone who asks that I'm done with that chapter of my life. This story is titled, After 12 Years of Running the Family Business, My Parents Kicked Me Out and Made My 22-year-old nephew the CEO, because he is smart like his mother. Now, after he destroyed the company, they are begging for my help. Hey everyone! We spend so much time finding these stories for you. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world and helps keep this journey going strong. Let's grow together. Now, let's start the video. OP starts by saying, Hey Reddit, I've always thought of myself as a guy who's got his shit together, but lately, I'm starting to question everything. Let me set the scene for you all. This all started at my dad's 62nd birthday party, and I swear it felt like my life flipped upside down in an instant. For context, I've been working in my dad's company for the past 12 years. 12 years of dedication, grinding, and building up the business. I thought I was set. I thought I'd inherit the company one day, as any loyal family member might expect after putting in the work. It was a pretty big party, honestly. We had friends, family, business associates, you name it. My mom and dad love a good celebration, and this one was no exception. Drinks were flowing, food was amazing, everyone seemed to be having a good time. Then came the moment my dad stood up to make a toast. I thought it'd just be the usual. A couple of jokes, a heartfelt thank you, and maybe a little bit about how much he was looking forward to retiring. But then he hit us with that announcement. I'm happy to say that after much thought and discussion, I'm ready to retire in a few months. And I've decided to pass the torch of CEO to someone who I think will take the company to new heights. My grandson, Mike. I froze. I thought maybe I'd misheard him. Grandson? Mike? The kid's 22, fresh out of business school. No real experience. And yet, somehow, he's the one taking over the company I've dedicated over a decade of my life to? The applause and congratulations around the room felt like daggers. My heart was pounding, and my stomach felt like it was going to drop out of my body. I tried to keep my composure, but inside, I was fuming. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Mike. He's a decent enough kid when you're just chatting with him at family get-togethers, but he's young and inexperienced. He doesn't know the first thing about running a company, and I can say that with confidence because I've been running it for years now. All Mike has is a shiny degree and my parents' misplaced confidence. I, on the other hand, had years of blood, sweat, and tears invested into this business. But apparently, that didn't count for much. After the toast, everyone went back to mingling, but I couldn't even process what was happening. My wife came over to check on me, and I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost, because she immediately asked what was wrong. I just shook my head and told her we'd talk about it later. I needed time to figure out what the hell I was going to do. Later that night, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, I confronted my dad privately. I thought maybe he'd explain it was just a formality, or that I'd still be heavily involved. Something to justify this insane decision. But nope, he doubled down. He told me he believed Mike was the right choice because he was young, full of fresh ideas, and had a degree. A freaking degree. Meanwhile, I'd been the one actually building relationships with clients, managing the team, and handling day-to-day operations for over a decade. He even had the audacity to say, "You can still work with him, you know. Mentor him. Show him the ropes." That was it for me. I told him right then and there that I couldn't stay. There was no way I'd work under Mike after everything I'd done for the company. It wasn't even about the money or the title at that point. It was the principle. I'd earned that position. I deserved it. And being told I wasn't even considered was like a slap in the face. The next couple of days were a blur. My parents tried to talk me out of quitting, saying I was being dramatic, that I needed to think about the family. But I couldn't see it any other way. If they didn't value my work enough to give me the role I'd been working towards, then I didn't see the point in staying. So, I handed in my resignation, packed up my office, and walked away. Walking out of that office for the last time was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'd spent so many years there. I knew every inch of that place, the good parts and the bad. It wasn't just a job to me. It was a part of my life. Leaving felt like cutting off a limb, but I knew I had to. Staying would have been even worse. My wife was incredibly supportive through all of this. She told me she respected my decision and that she was proud of me for standing up for myself. She saw how much this hurt me, but she also knew I couldn't stay in a situation where I wasn't respected. That support meant the world to me because, honestly, it felt like the rest of my family was against me. My mom kept calling, begging me to reconsider. My dad even showed up at my house unannounced one day, trying to convince me to come back. But every time they asked, my answer was the same. No. The hardest part of all this was the feeling of betrayal. My dad and I used to be close, especially when we first started the company. I gave up my own career to help him build his dream, and now it felt like he was throwing me away. And for what? Some idea that Mike was the future just because he had a degree? It didn't make sense. After I left, I didn't hear from Mike directly. I don't even know if he wanted the position or if he just went along with it because my parents insisted. Either way, it didn't matter. The damage was done. My parents had made their choice, and now I had to make mine. The first few weeks after quitting were tough. I kept replaying the conversation with my dad in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said or done differently. But every time I came to the same conclusion. I made the right call. There was no way I could have stayed and watched Mike fumble his way through running the company while I stood on the sidelines, biting my tongue. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about my self-respect. So, here I am now, 6 months later, still trying to piece my life back together. I've been keeping my distance from my family, focusing on figuring out my next steps. And as much as it hurts to say this, I think walking away was the best thing I could have done. If they couldn't see my worth, then I had no reason to stick around. After I quit, I thought I'd wash my hands of the family business for good. I didn't want to think about it, hear about it, or even be reminded it existed. But life doesn't work like that, especially when the thing you're trying to forget is tied to your family. Despite my best efforts, news about the company and Mike's disastrous leadership kept finding its way to me. At first, it was little things. A friend of mine who still worked there texted me saying, "Dude, Mike just fired 3 senior employees because they didn't vibe with his vision." My first reaction? I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Mike had no clue what he was doing. Those employees had been with us since the early days and knew the business inside out. Losing them was like cutting off an arm and expecting to run a marathon. Next, I heard he was making some bold changes to our contracts. I'm all for innovation, but Mike was messing with deals that had been in place for years. Relationships I had carefully built and nurtured. Clients started walking away, frustrated and confused. And still, my parents stuck by him. "He's just adjusting," my mom told a mutual friend. "It's all part of the process." Yeah, sure. The process of tanking a company. Then came the real kicker, financial fraud. I don't know all the specifics because, honestly, I don't care to dig into the details. But from what I gathered, Mike tried to inflate our numbers to impress a big client. Rookie mistake. The guy probably thought he was being clever, but all he did was wave a giant red flag that screamed, "Audit me!" The fallout was immediate and brutal. The company's reputation was shredded, clients bailed en masse, and the lawsuits started piling up. Hearing about all this was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. On one hand, I felt vindicated. I mean, I'd warned my parents that Mike wasn't ready for the job, but they didn't listen. On the other hand, it was painful to see something I'd worked so hard to build crumble in such a short amount of time. I didn't want to care, but I couldn't help it. That company had been my life for 12 years. It was like watching someone take a sledgehammer to a house you built with your own 2 hands. But here's the thing. None of this surprised me. Mike was never prepared to lead. The guy grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth, never had to struggle for anything. He had this arrogance about him, like he thought he could walk into a room and just figure things out as he went. That might work in school, but not in the real world. Business isn't forgiving. It doesn't care about your last name or your GPA. And Mike was learning that the hard way. I wasn't the only one who saw it coming. I started getting calls and texts from former coworkers, people I hadn't spoken to in months. "Man, we miss you around here," one guy said. "It's a mess without you." Another told me, "The place feels like a sinking ship. I don't know how much longer I can stick around." It was flattering, sure, but also bittersweet. These were people I'd worked alongside for years, people who had trusted me and supported me. Hearing them struggle made me wish I could help, but I knew better than to get involved. I wasn't about to swoop in and clean up Mike's mess. That wasn't my job anymore. What really got me, though, was how my parents handled all of this. Instead of holding Mike accountable, they made excuses for him. He's under a lot of pressure, my mom said when someone asked about the fraud charges. He just needs time to find his footing. Time? The guy had managed to nearly destroy the company in less than 6 months. How much more time did he need? And let's not forget my sister. She was Mike's biggest cheerleader through all of this, acting like he was some kind of misunderstood genius. I don't know if she was genuinely delusional or just too proud to admit she'd made a mistake. Either way, it was infuriating. She'd pushed for Mike to get the CEO role, convinced my parents it was the right move, and now she was doubling down on her bad decision. I stayed out of it for the most part, but one day I couldn't resist. I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store, and they casually mentioned how exciting it must be to see the next generation taking over the business. I just smiled and said, "Exciting isn't the word I'd use." They laughed, but I wasn't joking. In a weird way, watching the company implode was cathartic. It was like all the frustration and anger I'd felt when they passed me over for Mike was being validated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They'd made a huge mistake, and now they were paying the price. That said, I didn't revel in their failure. I'd moved on, or at least I was trying to. I'd started brainstorming ideas for my own business, something I could build from the ground up without anyone else's interference. My wife was incredibly supportive, encouraging me to take the leap and do something for myself. It was scary, but also exciting. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own future. Meanwhile, my parents were scrambling. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were trying to contain the damage and restore trust with clients. Good luck with that. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to get it back, especially in the business world. And with lawsuits piling up, they had bigger problems to deal with. As for Mike, I had no idea how he was handling everything. I hadn't spoken to him since I quit, and honestly, I didn't care to. But from what I heard, he was in over his head. Some people said he was still trying to act like he had it all under control, while others claimed he was on the verge of a breakdown. Either way, it wasn't my problem. By the time 6 months had passed, the company was a shadow of what it had been. Clients were gone, employees were leaving in droves, and my parents were desperate. They hadn't reached out to me yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. And when they did, I already knew what I was going to say. 6 months after I walked out of the family business, the inevitable happened. I'd been bracing myself for it, but still felt a wave of mixed emotions when I saw my parents standing on my doorstep. They looked older, more stressed than I'd ever seen them. My dad had this awkward stiffness to him, like he didn't want to be there but knew he had no choice. My mom, though, her expression said it all. Desperation. I didn't invite them in right away. Honestly, I was tempted to shut the door in their faces, but I didn't. "Can we come in?" my dad asked, his voice hesitant. I stepped aside without a word, and they shuffled in. The tension in the room was immediate. My wife, who'd been in the kitchen, gave me a look but didn't say anything. She knew this moment was coming too. She quietly slipped upstairs, leaving me to deal with it. I sat down across from them, arms crossed, waiting for them to start. My mom jumped in first. She always did. "We need your help," she said, her voice wavering. "The business is—" She hesitated, like saying it out loud would make it worse. "It's in trouble. Mike made some mistakes. Big ones." I didn't respond. I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch. It was clear she wanted me to fill the gap, to jump in and offer a solution. I didn't. Eventually, my dad spoke up. "He's in over his head," he admitted, rubbing his temple like he had a headache. "And now the company is facing lawsuits, losing clients. We're barely hanging on." This was a moment I'd thought about many times since I quit. I'd imagined them coming to me, asking me to fix things, and me laughing in their faces. But now that it was actually happening, I felt more annoyed than anything else. It wasn't satisfying or validating. It was just sad. "And what do you expect me to do about it?" I finally asked. My tone wasn't angry, but it wasn't kind either. I wanted them to squirm a little. They deserved it. My mom reached out, putting her hand on mine. "You know the business better than anyone," she said. "We need you to come back, please." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For years, all I wanted was for them to recognize my value, to admit I was the one keeping the company afloat. And now, here they were, practically begging me to save them. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an insult. After everything, they still expected me to clean up their mess. "Why don't you ask Mike?" I said, pulling my hand away. "He's the CEO, right? Let him fix it." "Mike can't handle it," my dad said, frustration creeping into his voice. We made a mistake. We see that now. But this is bigger than him. It's about the company. About everything we've built. Everything I've built, I corrected. I'm the one who spent 12 years making that company what it is. And you threw me aside like I was nothing. My dad sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. He looked tired, defeated. We thought we were doing the right thing, he said. We thought Mike would bring something new to the table. But you were right. He wasn't ready. And now, we're paying the price. Hearing him admit that should have felt good, but it didn't. It just made me angrier. They'd known Mike wasn't ready. I'd told them over and over, but they hadn't listened. And now they wanted me to pick up the pieces? I'm sorry, my mom said softly, tears welling up in her eyes. We were wrong. We should have trusted you, but it's not too late. You can still fix this. I stood up, pacing the room. You want me to fix it? I said, my voice rising. You think I can just walk back in there and magically make everything better? Do you even hear yourselves? You didn't trust me before, but now that you're desperate, I'm suddenly good enough? They didn't say anything, and the silence only fueled my anger. Do you even understand what you're asking? You're asking me to put my life on hold again, to bail you out of a situation you created. And for what? So you can pat me on the back and tell me, good job, kid, before throwing me under the bus again? That's not what this is, my dad said firmly. This is about saving the company, saving our legacy. Your legacy, I shot back. Not mine, not anymore. My mom started crying then, full-on sobbing into her hands. My dad just sat there, staring at the floor like he didn't know what to do. And for a moment, I felt bad. They were my parents, after all. But then I remembered the humiliation, the betrayal, the countless nights I'd spent working late while they were off praising Mike for his good grades. That angered me more than their tears could ever soften. I can't help you, I said finally, my voice steady. I won't. I've already started working on my own plans. I'm building something for myself now, and I'm not going to throw that away to clean up your mess. My dad looked up, his face hardening. So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on your family? I laughed, a bitter sound. You turned your back on me first. Don't try to guilt me into this. It won't work. They left soon after that, my mom still sniffling, and my dad looking like he wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. As soon as the door closed behind them, I let out a shaky breath. My wife came downstairs, wrapping her arms around me. You did the right thing, she said. You don't owe them anything. She was right, of course, I knew that. But it still hurt. Walking away from the company had been hard enough. Walking away from my parents felt even harder. But I couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about what they'd said. About saving the company. About fixing things. A part of me wanted to. Not for them, but for myself. For the people who'd worked with me. The clients who'd trusted me. But another part of me knew it wasn't my responsibility anymore. They'd made their choice, and now they had to live with it. I fell asleep that night, feeling more certain than ever. I wasn't going back. It was time to move forward. After my parents showed up at my doorstep, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in months, I stopped looking back. I'd spent too much time stewing over what happened, rehashing the betrayal, the disappointment, the anger. But after slamming that door on them, metaphorically and literally, I realized it was time to focus on what lay ahead. If I wasn't going back to their company, I needed to build something of my own. Starting from scratch is daunting, even when you know what you're doing. I didn't have a big office or a fancy team. Hell, I didn't even have a proper plan at first. All I had were the skills and knowledge I'd built over 12 years and the determination to prove to myself, and maybe a little to them, that I could do this. The first step was figuring out what kind of business I wanted to create. Real estate was all I knew, so that part was a no-brainer. But I didn't just want to recreate my dad's company. I wanted to do something different, something better. I'd learned a lot over the years, not just about the market, but about how to treat people, clients, employees, everyone. My parents had always treated the business like a machine, churning out deals without much regard for the people behind them. I wanted to build something more personal, more human. I started by reaching out to a few of my old clients. These were people I'd worked with for years, people who trusted me. I explained that I was starting my own thing and asked if they'd be interested in working with me again. To my surprise and relief, most of them were enthusiastic. We were wondering when you'd get back in the game, one of them said. Mike's been a disaster. We've been waiting for someone to step up. Their responses gave me the boost of confidence I needed. If they believed in me, maybe I could pull this off after all. But getting clients on board was just one piece of the puzzle. I also needed a team. The company wasn't going to run itself. That's where my old coworkers came in. I'd kept in touch with a few of them after I left, and I knew some were unhappy with how things had been going under Mike's leadership. One by one, I started making calls. Hey, I'm putting something together, I told them. It's small right now, but I think it has potential. Are you interested? The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Many of them had already left my dad's company, tired of the chaos and mismanagement. They were between jobs, looking for something new. I'm in, one of them said immediately. I've been waiting for this call. Within a couple of weeks, I had a small but solid team. We didn't have a fancy office or shiny equipment, just a shared workspace and a lot of enthusiasm. It felt like the early days of my dad's company when we were scrappy and hungry. Except this time, it was my vision, my rules. Setting up the business was a whirlwind. Between registering the company, building a website, and figuring out how to market ourselves, I barely had time to breathe. But it was exhilarating. Every small win, a client signing on, a lead turning into a deal, felt like a massive accomplishment. For the first time in years, I wasn't just working. I was creating something, and it felt incredible. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, moments where I questioned whether I was biting off more than I could chew. The stress of juggling everything, finances, logistics, client relationships, was overwhelming at times. But every time I felt like giving up, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I wasn't just building a business. I was proving to myself that I could. One of the biggest challenges was balancing work and personal life. My wife was incredibly supportive, but I knew it wasn't easy for her. She was working full-time while I poured all my energy into the business, often working late into the night. You're going to burn out if you keep this up, she warned me one night as I sat hunched over my laptop reviewing contracts. I know, I said, rubbing my temples. But if I don't push now, it'll never take off. She didn't argue, but I could see the concern in her eyes. It was a reminder that while building the business was important, so was maintaining the life we'd built together. I made a mental note to find a better balance, though I wasn't sure how just yet. As the weeks went by, things started to fall into place. Our first few deals closed smoothly, and the feedback from clients was overwhelmingly positive. This feels like the old days, one of them told me, when things were simpler, more personal. I missed this. Hearing that felt like validation. I was doing something right. Early, the business began to grow. It wasn't explosive growth by any means, but it was steady, and that was enough for me. Meanwhile, I couldn't ignore the rumblings about my dad's company. Word on the street was that things were going from bad to worse. They were losing clients left and right, and the lawsuits were piling up. It was hard not to feel a twinge of satisfaction. After all, I'd warned them. But mostly, I just felt sorry for the employees and clients who were caught in the crossfire. They deserved better. What really surprised me was how many of those clients and employees started coming to me. It wasn't something I actively pursued, at least not at first. But word got around that I was starting my own thing, and people reached out. If you're looking for more staff, let me know, one former coworker said. I can't stand it here anymore. Another client emailed me saying, we've always trusted you. Let's talk. I wasn't poaching. They were coming to me. And honestly, it felt good. These were people who recognized my value, who wanted to work with me because of what I brought to the table. It was a stark contrast to how my family had treated me. By the end of the second month, we'd outgrown our shared workspace and started looking for a proper office. It was a small milestone, but it felt huge. Standing in that empty space, imagining the possibilities, I couldn't help but smile. This was mine. All of it. No one could take it away from me. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. By the time I'd settled into the rhythm of my new business, things with my family had escalated. Word had spread about what I was doing. Clients switching to me. Employees reaching out to join my team. And it didn't take long for the news to reach my parents and sister. I hadn't spoken to any of them since their visit to my house. And I wasn't planning to. But they clearly weren't done with me. It started with emails. My dad sent a few, all variations of the same message. He wanted to talk, to work things out. I ignored them. Then my mom started calling. At first, it was once a week, then every few days. I never picked up. Eventually, she left a voicemail that made my blood boil. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice trembling with barely concealed anger. You're tearing this family apart. I don't know how you can live with yourself. I deleted the message without replying. What was there to say? They'd made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. I wasn't responsible for their mess, no matter how much they tried to pin it on me. But things really came to a head when my sister got involved. Unlike my parents, who were still trying to guilt me into coming back, she went straight for the jugular. One day, out of nowhere, I received a letter from a lawyer. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but as I read through it, my stomach sank. They were accusing me of stealing clients and employees. According to the letter, I'd intentionally undermined their business by poaching key accounts and personnel. They claimed I was violating some sort of unwritten family agreement and demanded I cease all operations immediately. If I didn't, they threatened to take legal action. I couldn't help but laugh as I read it. It was so ridiculous, so petty. There was no non-compete clause in my contract when I worked for them. I'd checked. Twice. They had no legal standing whatsoever. But the fact that they'd resorted to this tactic told me everything I needed to know about how desperate they were. Instead of responding directly, I forwarded the letter to my lawyer. "Handle it," I told him. "I don't have time for this nonsense." He assured me it was an empty threat and not to worry. Still, the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. A few days later, my parents showed up at my office unannounced. It was the first time they'd seen the new space, and I could tell they weren't happy about it. My mom looked around with thinly veiled disdain, while my dad's expression was a mix of anger and defeat. "Do you really think this is going to work?" my dad asked, gesturing at the office. "You're playing a dangerous game." I leaned back in my chair, unfazed. "It's already working," I said simply. "And it's not a game." My mom's face flushed with anger. "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family?" "To us?" I stood up, keeping my voice calm but firm. "What I'm doing," I said, "is building something for myself. Something you didn't think I was capable of. If that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine." They didn't stay long after that. I think they realized there was no point in trying to guilt me anymore. But their visit left me shaken. Not because of what they said, but because it confirmed something I'd suspected for a while. They weren't just upset about losing the business. They were upset about losing control over me. For years, I'd been the dependable one, the one they could count on to keep things running smoothly. I'd sacrificed so much of my own life to help build their dream, and now that I was gone, they didn't know what to do. It wasn't about the clients or the money, it was about the power dynamic, and they hated that I'd taken it back. Meanwhile, things at my dad's company were going from bad to worse. Employees were quitting in droves, and their reputation was in tatters. Mike, I heard, was barely showing up to work anymore. Someone told me he'd been spotted at a bar in the middle of the day, looking completely out of it. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I couldn't help but think about how all of this might have been avoided if my parents had made a different choice. The lawsuits were still ongoing, and from what little I knew, the company's legal team was struggling to keep up. I didn't envy them. Trying to clean up the mess Mike had made was like trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. It was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crashing down. Through it all, I kept my focus on my own business. We were growing steadily, bringing in new clients and expanding our team. I hired a small marketing firm to help us get the word out, and it paid off almost immediately. The inquiries started pouring in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about the future. One night, as I was reviewing our financials, my wife came into the room with a glass of ginger. "You know," she said, sitting down next to me, "I don't think I've ever seen you this happy." I smiled, setting the papers aside. "It feels good," I admitted, "building something for myself, not answering to anyone else." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You deserve it." Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. For so long, I'd been chasing someone else's approval. My parents, my family, even Mike, in a way. But now, I was finally doing something for myself. And for the first time, I didn't care what anyone else thought. As I sat there, surrounded by the evidence of my hard work, I realized something important. This wasn't just about proving my parents wrong or outshining Mike. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of more, that I didn't need their validation to succeed. And in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. Let them send their letters. Let them make their threats. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. Months after my parents' unannounced visit to my office and the laughable legal threats from my sister, I found myself in a place I hadn't expected. Contentment. My new business was running well. Not perfectly, of course, but enough to keep me busy and optimistic. My wife had even started talking about scaling down her own job to join me full-time, and the thought of building this together made it all feel even more meaningful. Still, the remnants of my old life lingered in the background. My parents weren't the kind to just let things go, and though I had blocked most of their attempts to contact me, every now and then, word about the family business or Mike would filter through mutual acquaintances. And the news was rarely good. Mike, it seemed, had finally cracked under the pressure. The lawsuits had drained the company financially, and the loss of key clients meant their revenue was practically non-existent. My dad was forced to liquidate some assets to keep the doors open, but even that wasn't enough. A couple of former co-workers who had joined me recently mentioned that the office was practically a ghost town. Employees who stayed were doing so out of desperation, not loyalty. One day, I got a call from an old client who'd stuck with my dad's company longer than most. "Your parents sold the building," he said. "I thought you'd want to know." That caught me off guard. Selling the office? That building had been the company's home since day one. It was more than just a workspace. It was a symbol of everything we'd built together. Hearing that it was gone felt strange. Not sad exactly, but like another piece of the past had crumbled away. "Thanks for letting me know," I told him. "But I'm not involved with them anymore." "I figured as much," he said. "Just thought you'd want to hear it from someone who's still rooting for you." I appreciated that. It reminded me that not everyone had turned their back on me during this mess. A few weeks after that, I got another surprise. This time, it wasn't a phone call or a letter. It was an email from my dad. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The subject line read, "An apology." I opened it, skimming the first few lines, expecting more excuses or pleas for help. But as I read further, I realized it was different this time. He wasn't asking me to come back or trying to shift the blame. He was admitting he'd made a mistake. "I thought I was doing what was best for the family," he wrote. "But I see now that I let my pride get in the way. I listened to your sister because I didn't want to admit I was wrong about Mike. I see now that you were the one who deserved that position, and I'm sorry for not recognizing it sooner." The email went on for several paragraphs, recounting moments from the past that I'd long since buried. He talked about how much he'd relied on me during the early years, how he knew the company wouldn't have survived without my contributions. Reading it felt surreal. Part of me had waited years to hear these words, but now that they were here, I didn't know how to feel. Toward the end, he mentioned something that stuck with me. "I know I can't fix what's happened," he wrote, "but I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive me." I closed the email without replying. Forgiveness was a complicated thing. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really, but I wasn't ready to let them back into my life either. It felt like they were still trying to pull me into the past, and I'd worked too hard to leave that behind. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. We moved into a larger office space and brought on a few more employees. Some of the clients who'd stayed loyal to my dad's company eventually reached out, asking if they could work with me instead. I was hesitant at first, but after a few conversations, I realized they weren't just looking for a deal. They were looking for stability. I gave them that, and in return, they gave me their trust. As for Mike, the last I heard, he was living with my sister again. The lawsuits had been settled, but the financial damage was done. He was reportedly trying to find himself, though what that actually meant was anyone's guess. I didn't wish him ill, but I also didn't feel sorry for him. He'd been handed an opportunity he wasn't ready for, and he'd squandered it. That wasn't my problem. My sister, predictably, wasn't handling the fallout well. From what little I heard through mutual acquaintances, she was bitter and angry, blaming everyone but herself for how things turned out. My parents had stopped defending her publicly, which told me everything I needed to know. They were finally seeing her for who she really was. Not the brilliant daughter they'd always believed in, but someone who was good at looking out for herself and no one else. One day, while sitting in my office and looking out at the city skyline, I realized I felt free, truly free. The weight of my family's expectations, their disappointment, their manipulation, it was all gone. For so long, I'd defined myself by what they thought of me, by what I could do to earn their approval. But now, none of that mattered. I wasn't building my business to prove a point or to spite them. I was doing it for myself, for my wife, for the people who believed in me. And that was enough. I don't know if I'll ever fully reconcile with my family. Maybe someday, when the dust has truly settled, we'll find a way to mend the broken pieces. Or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm okay with it. For now, I'm focused on the future. And for the first time in years, it feels like mine. "You're dead to us. Don't ever crawl back here again," my mom texted, days after I refused to cover my sister's $85,000 business program. I said, "You just slit your own throat." Then I cut off their $1 million gravy train, and now they're begging like their lives depend on it. Holy crap, Reddit. I never thought I'd be posting here. But after what happened 8 months ago, I need to get this off my chest. My buddy Alex convinced me to share this story because he says it's the most epic family revenge he's ever witnessed. Buckle up because this gets absolutely wild. I'm 32 male, and I own a mid-sized construction company that specializes in commercial building projects. Started with just me and a pickup truck 7 years ago, Now I've got 52 employees, and we pulled in $14.2 million last year. Not bragging, just setting the scene for why my family thought I was their personal ATM. My family dynamic was always complicated and honestly pretty dysfunctional looking back. Dad, Rick, 58 male, runs a concrete supply business that's been struggling for years, mostly because he refuses to modernize or adapt to industry changes. He's stubborn as a mule and thinks technology is the enemy. Mom, Carol, 55 female, has this boutique real estate agency that looks super fancy with the marble counters and expensive artwork, but barely breaks even most months. She spends more on maintaining appearances than actually generating sales. My sister Madison, 28 female, is a professional Instagram influencer who calls herself an entrepreneur, but has literally never earned a legitimate dollar in her life. Her idea of work is posting photos of overpriced coffee and designer handbags while spouting motivational quotes she found online. When my construction business really took off about 5 years ago, I started helping the family out. Dad needed new equipment, I'd co-sign loans. Mom's real estate office needed cash during slow seasons, I'd wire $50,000 without thinking twice. Madison wanted to start her luxury lifestyle brand? Sure, here's $75,000 to get started. My business partner Alex always gave me grief about it. Dude, you're running a family welfare program, he'd say during our morning meetings. When's the last time any of them actually thanked you? Honestly, I couldn't remember. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just helping out occasionally when they had small problems. I had systematically become the financial backbone, holding their entire world together. Like some kind of invisible support structure they took completely for granted. Dad's concrete business was operating entirely on my business credit lines because he couldn't qualify for his own after some serious tax issues from 2018 involving unreported cash payments. Mom's boutique agency was paying rent through automatic transfers from my company account, transfers she thought were coming from some mythical family trust fund our grandfather supposedly set up. Madison's entire lavish lifestyle, the downtown loft with city views, the white BMW, the endless designer everything, was funded by what she believed was a family investment account, but was actually just me sending her $4,500 every single month like clockwork. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Madison calls me on a Tuesday morning, doesn't even say hello, just launches into Jake, I need you to cover something important for me. Turns out she'd been accepted into this exclusive business mentorship program in Los Angeles. The cost? $85,000. For 6 months of networking with industry leaders and mindset coaching. Here's the thing though, we were in the middle of our biggest expansion yet, and I'm talking about serious growth that would determine our company's future for the next decade. I'd just hired 15 new employees, including 2 project managers, 3 site supervisors, and a whole crew of skilled workers. We were also financing a massive equipment purchase that was costing us nearly $200,000, new excavators, concrete mixers, and specialized machinery that would let us take on bigger commercial projects. Cash flow was genuinely tight, not because we weren't profitable, we were crushing it, but because every available dollar was strategically invested into growth initiatives that would secure our future and potentially double our revenue within 2 years. So for the first time ever, I told her something I'd never said before. Madison, I can't swing that right now. The business is expanding rapidly, and I've got serious payroll commitments. Maybe in a few months we can revisit this. The silence on the phone was deafening. Then she explodes, Are you serious right now? After everything this family has done for you? I'm thinking, what exactly has this family done for me? But before I could respond, she hits me with, You know what, Jake? Success has made you selfish. Don't bother calling me back until you remember what family means. She hung up on me. That was Tuesday. Thursday night, I'm at home with my wife, Sarah, finally relaxing after a 14-hour day managing 3 different job sites when my phone buzzes. Text message from Dad. You're no longer my son. Don't contact us again. I swear I stared at that message for 20 minutes straight. Called Alex immediately. What the heck happened? He says when I read him the text. Over 85 grand? Are you kidding me? Friday morning, there's an envelope slipped under my front door. No return address, just my name written in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. You are not welcome at family events. Do not come to the house. That's when Alex came over and found me sitting in my kitchen, just staring at this note like it was written in a foreign language. Bro, Alex says, sitting down across from me. You realize what this means, right? What? They just declared war on the wrong guy. Alex has been my best friend since we were 14 and started working construction jobs together every summer. When I decided to start my own company, he was the first person I called. He's got this incredible ability to see through people's nonsense and find humor in even the darkest situations, which is probably why we've been business partners for so long. All right, Alex says, setting up his laptop at my kitchen table Friday evening. Let's talk facts here. How much money have you actually given these people over the years? I pulled up my accounting software, and we started going through the records. The numbers were honestly shocking, even to me. Dad's business, $340,000 in loan guarantees, plus about $180,000 in direct cash loans that were never repaid. Mom's real estate agency, $290,000 over 3 years in temporary cash flow assistance. Madison's lifestyle, $216,000 in direct transfers, plus I'd been covering her rent, $2,800 monthly, and car payment, $830 monthly for the past 2 years. Good grief, Jake, Alex says, nearly choking on his coffee. You've given them almost $1 million. $1 million. And they disowned you over $85,000? But here's where Alex really proved his worth as a friend and business partner. Dude, you realize they don't actually understand how their own finances work, right? Like Madison probably thinks her rent gets paid by magic. He was absolutely right. In all my years of supporting them, none of them had ever asked for details about how the money flowed. They just assumed it appeared when they needed it. So what do you want to do? Alex asks, leaning back in his chair. I want to show them what not my son actually looks like. Alex grins. Now you're talking, but we're going to do this intelligently. No emotional decisions, just cold, hard business logic. Saturday morning, Alex shows up with coffee and a legal pad. All right, brother, time for some financial reality. But first, we're going to protect you legally from any blowback. We spent the entire weekend systematically mapping out every single financial connection I had with my family. And honestly, it was like discovering an iceberg. The surface stuff was just the beginning. The web was way more extensive and complicated than even I had realized after years of gradual involvement. Dad's concrete business wasn't just getting occasional help. It was essentially operating as a subsidiary under my commercial credit lines because his personal credit was completely destroyed. The company trucks, the equipment leases, even the liability insurance were all flowing through my business credit. His employee health insurance was subsidized through my company's group plan because his business couldn't afford decent coverage on its own, and I'd been quietly covering the difference for 3 years. Mom's real estate office situation was even more complex than I'd remembered. The lease was personally guaranteed by me when she couldn't qualify solo. Her website hosting, professional licensing fees, marketing budget, all that expensive office furniture she loved showing off to clients, even her membership in the Regional Real Estate Association. Everything was paid through automatic transfers from my business account that she naively assumed came from some family trust fund our grandfather had established decades ago. Madison was absolutely the worst-case scenario, though, and Alex was shaking his head as we documented everything. Not only was I covering her rent and car payments, but her credit cards were tied directly to my business accounts as consulting expenses. She was technically listed as a brand consultant for my company, which was just a clever way to funnel her money legally without tax complications. Her health insurance, phone plan, gym membership, grocery delivery service, clothing allowances, even her subscription boxes for makeup and wine were all flowing through my company, like she was some kind of dependent child rather than a grown adult. Dude, Alex says, reviewing our notes, you didn't just help them out occasionally. You basically adopted 3 financially irresponsible adults. By Sunday evening, we had a comprehensive plan. Alex dubbed it Operation Reality Check. Here's the thing, he explains. They want to disown you? Perfect. But they don't get to keep all the benefits of being your family while treating you like garbage. Time to cut every single cord. Monday morning, I started making calls. Alex insisted on being present for what he called the Great Financial Disconnection. We set up in my home office Monday morning with our laptops, coffee, and what Alex called our productivity playlist, mostly motivational business podcasts. All right, brother, Alex says. Let's start with the straightforward stuff and work our way up to nuclear options. First call. My business insurance agent removed Dad's trucks from our fleet coverage effective immediately. Next, the commercial credit line that financed his equipment. I requested an immediate review of all authorized users and had his access terminated. How long until he notices this one? Alex asks. Probably when he tries to purchase materials tomorrow morning. Beautiful. Next up was Mom's situation. Called the commercial real estate management company and terminated my personal guarantee on her office lease. Then I canceled every single automatic transfer to her business accounts. She's going to panic when that rent notice arrives, Alex says with satisfaction. But Madison's financial setup was the most complex. Alex was reading from our list: car payment, rent, health insurance, phone service, gym membership, grocery delivery, credit cards. Jake, you were basically this woman's sugar daddy. I systematically canceled everything: car payment authorization, health insurance coverage, phone plan, even her streaming service subscriptions that were somehow tied to my accounts. By noon Monday, Alex and I had methodically removed my financial backing from their entire existence. But we weren't finished. Time for the nuclear option, Alex announces. The business partnerships. Here's what they never understood. Dad's concrete business was technically structured as a subsidiary of my construction company for tax optimization purposes. Mom's real estate agency was operating under my business license through some complicated arrangement my accountant had set up. Madison's luxury lifestyle brand was actually just a DBA registration under my company's umbrella. If they want to disown you, Alex points out, they lose all the business protections and advantages too. I contacted my business attorney and initiated the process of dissolving every shared business entity. By Wednesday, they'd all be operating as completely independent businesses with zero connection to me or my company. How long until they realize what's happening? Alex asks. Probably when they try to place orders tomorrow and discover their credit has been terminated. But the real masterstroke was Alex's suggestion about the house. See, my parents live in this beautiful suburban home they purchased 5 years ago. What they conveniently forgot is that I co-signed the mortgage because their credit scores weren't sufficient for the loan amount they wanted. Technically, I owned 50% equity in their primary residence. You could force a partition sale, Alex explains. Make them buy you out or sell the house. That seems pretty nuclear. Brother, they told you that you're not their son. At this point, why should you care? I contacted my attorney and began the legal process of demanding my equity stake in the house. In Texas, I could force a partition sale if we couldn't reach an agreement on terms. By Wednesday afternoon, their entire financial ecosystem was about to collapse, and they had absolutely no idea what was coming. You know what the best part is? Alex says, as we're finishing up the paperwork. They're going to blame each other initially. Madison's going to assume Dad stopped paying her bills. Dad's going to think Mom messed up the business accounts. It's going to be complete chaos. Thursday morning, my phone started ringing nonstop. Thursday at 6:47 a.m., my phone starts exploding with missed calls. Madison, Dad, even Mom. But the first actual message I received was a text from Madison at 7:23 a.m. My car got repossessed from the parking garage. What did you do? Alex was already at my office with coffee and breakfast sandwiches, ready for what he called the fireworks display. She thinks it's your fault her car got repossessed? He asks, reading over my shoulder. I mean, technically it is. I stopped authorizing the payments. That's absolutely perfect. Just perfect. By 8 a.m., the calls were relentless. I put my phone on speaker so Alex could listen. First call was from Dad. Jake, what's going on? The lumber supplier called and said our credit line is suspended. They won't deliver materials for the Morrison project. I let him talk for about 30 seconds before hanging up. Stone cold, Alex says, clearly impressed. Next call was Mom. Jake, honey, there's been some kind of mistake with the office rent. The property manager says I'm behind on payments, but that's impossible because... Click. You're getting really good at this, Alex observes. But Madison's call was the most entertaining. She was actually crying. Real tears. Going on about how her landlord was threatening eviction, and her credit cards weren't working, and how could I do this to her? Madison, I finally interrupted, you told me I was selfish and not to call you back. So I'm not calling you back. I'm simply doing exactly what you requested. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Actually, it's precisely what you meant. You and Dad made it crystal clear that I'm not family anymore. So I'm acting accordingly. Alex was giving me encouraging thumbs-up gestures throughout the conversation. Jake, please. I need help. I don't understand what's happening to me. What's happening is you're experiencing life without family financial support. You wanted independence from your selfish brother. So congratulations on achieving that goal. I hung up and Alex started laughing. Dude, she genuinely has no concept of how money works. She literally thinks bills just magically pay themselves. Around 10 a.m., things escalated significantly. My attorney called with an update. Jake, I just received a very interesting phone call from someone claiming to be your father. He's demanding I cease all legal action immediately. What did you tell him? I informed him that I don't take instructions from people who aren't my clients. Alex nearly choked on his coffee. Your attorney is savage. By noon, the real panic was setting in. Mom actually showed up at my office building, which she'd never done in 7 years of my business operating. My assistant called me. Jake, there's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your mother. She seems quite upset. Tell her I'm unavailable and she needs to schedule an appointment through proper channels. She's insisting it's an emergency. Tell her emergencies require being family, and I was recently informed I'm not family anymore. Alex was thoroughly enjoying every moment of this. Brother, you're absolutely stone cold. I'm genuinely impressed. But the absolute highlight came around 2 p.m. when Madison showed up at my house with suitcases, crying hysterically. Jake, they evicted me. I have nowhere to go. Hotels exist for situations like this. I don't have money for a hotel. Then perhaps you should contact your family for assistance. You are my family. Actually, according to Dad's text message, I'm not. So you might want to figure out alternative arrangements. Alex was watching from my living room window, trying not to laugh out loud. That evening, all three of them appeared at my house together. Dad was carrying a bottle of wine like he was coming to a social dinner party. Son, he starts, I'm not your son. Remember? You made that very clear in writing. Look, we need to discuss this business situation. There's no business situation to discuss. There's just you dealing with the natural consequences of your choices. Alex opened my front door before I could stop him. Hey folks, Jake's pretty busy right now, but I'd be happy to take a message. The expressions on their faces were absolutely priceless. By Friday morning, the situation had escalated to full crisis mode for them. Alex came over early with breakfast and his laptop. Brother, you've got to see this, he says, pulling up Madison's Instagram account. She'd posted this long sob story about family betrayal and learning hard lessons about trust and independence. The comments section was brutal. People calling her out for being spoiled, asking why a 28-year-old needed family funding for basic living expenses. She's getting absolutely roasted, Alex laughs. Look at this comment. Maybe try getting an actual job instead of posting selfies all day. But the real entertainment came when my phone rang around 9 a.m. It was Dad, but his tone was completely different from previous calls. Jake, son, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. No misunderstanding whatsoever. You clearly stated I'm not your son. I'm simply respecting your decision. I was angry. I didn't actually mean... Dad, you sent me a text saying I'm not your son, then had Mom deliver a written note telling me I'm not welcome at family events. Those aren't words you say in anger. Those are calculated decisions. Alex was making encouraging, keep-going gestures behind his laptop. Look, can we just sit down and have a rational conversation about this? Your mother's extremely upset. My mother? I thought I wasn't part of the family anymore. Long pause. Jake, what do you want us to do here? Nothing. I want you to do absolutely nothing. You made your choice, now experience the consequences. I hung up and Alex was grinning ear to ear. Dude, he called you Zont like 6 times in that conversation. They're definitely feeling the financial pressure. Around 11 a.m., Mom called crying. Actual tears, which I'd maybe witnessed twice in my entire adult life. Jake, the office lease is in default. I could lose everything I've worked for. That sounds like a challenging business situation. You don't understand. This is my life's work. Mom, with respect, your life's work has been funded by me for the past 3 years. Maybe it's time to discover if it can actually function independently. Jake, please, I'm begging you. Begging who exactly? I'm not family, remember? But the absolute masterpiece came when Madison called around 2 p.m., completely hysterical. Jake, I'm staying in a Motel 6. Do you understand how humiliating this is for me? I wouldn't know. I've never needed family funding for my housing arrangements. Come on, you know I can't afford... Madison, you're 28 years old. The fact that you can't afford basic housing isn't my problem to solve. What am I supposed to do? Get employment? A job? Jake, I'm an influencer. I have a personal brand. Alex was dying laughing in the background. Ask her how much her brand actually pays per hour, he whispers. Madison, exactly how much does your influencer brand pay you monthly? Extended silence. That's not the point. No, that's precisely the point. You've been living off family money while pretending to be a successful businesswoman. Now you get to discover if your business model actually works. That evening, Alex and I were having coffee on my back patio when all 3 of them showed up again. This time, they looked like they'd been crying for hours. Jake, Dad starts, we're sorry. We made a terrible mistake. We want to make this right. Okay, what does making it right look like? They exchanged uncertain glances. Mom spoke up. We want you to be part of our family again. Cool. What's changed since Tuesday? More confused glances. What do you mean? Madison asks. I mean, 3 days ago, you decided I was selfish and not worth being related to because I couldn't fund Madison's $85,000 life coaching program. What's different now? Silence. Let me guess, Alex interjects. What's different is now you're facing the reality of cutting off your family bank account. That's not fair, Mom protests. Isn't it, though? I ask. Because if I was truly family, if you genuinely wanted me around for who I am, rather than what I provide financially, wouldn't you have had this conversation before your bills started bouncing? Dad attempted a different approach. Son, we know you've been generous over the years. Generous? Dad, I've given you people almost $1 million over 5 years. I've co-signed loans, guaranteed leases, and basically subsidized your entire lifestyles. That's not generosity. That's financial enabling. We didn't ask you to do all that, Madison says defensively. Alex and I both started laughing. Madison, I said, you literally contacted me twice monthly asking for money. You absolutely asked. The conversation continued for another hour, but it became clear they still didn't understand the fundamental issue. They weren't sorry for how they'd treated me. They were sorry about the consequences of their treatment. After they left, Alex and I sat back down with our coffee. So what's the plan now, brother? Now I let them figure out what family actually means when it's not based on financial transactions. The weekend came, and Alex convinced me to attend our friend Tyler's barbecue. You need to get out and socialize, man. Plus, I want to see if any of them show up groveling. Sure enough, around 3 p.m. while we're grilling burgers, my phone starts ringing. Alex sees the caller ID and announces to the entire party, "It's Madison!" Everyone be quiet. This is going to be entertaining. I answered on speaker. Jake, I need to talk to you privately. It's really important. I'm at a barbecue with friends. You know, people who actually enjoy my company. Jake, I'm serious. I'm in genuine trouble here. What kind of trouble? I borrowed money from someone and they want immediate repayment. Alex raises his eyebrows. How much money, Madison? Who is that? That's Alex. Remember him? My business partner and best friend who you've never bothered to learn the name of despite knowing him for 10 years? Jake, I borrowed $15,000 and the person wants it back by Monday? Or they're going to what? They say they're going to expose me on social media. It'll destroy my influencer reputation. The entire barbecue party is listening now. Tyler's girlfriend Jessica speaks up. Wait, she borrowed $15,000 to maintain her Instagram image? Madison must have heard her. Who said that? Jake, who are you with? I'm with my actual friends, Madison. You know, people who spend time with me even when I'm not paying for everything. Jake, please, I just need what? Money? From someone who's not your family? Long pause. You're still my brother. According to Dad's text message, I'm not. That was a mistake. No, Madison, the mistake was me thinking that financially supporting you people made us closer as a family. All it did was make you entitled and ungrateful. Alex gestured for the phone. Madison, this is Alex. I've got a question for you. What? When's Jake's birthday? What kind of question is that? Just answer it. When's your brother's birthday? Silence. How about his wife's name? What's Jake's wife's name? Madison? More silence. One more. What's Jake's company called? The business that's been funding your lifestyle for years? I don't see how that's relevant. It's relevant because you don't actually know anything about your brother's life, except that he gives you money. You don't know his birthday, his wife's name, or even what he does for work, but you definitely know his bank account routing number. Alex handed me back the phone. Madison, Alex is absolutely right. You want to be family? Tell me 3 things about my life that don't involve money. The silence stretched on for nearly 30 seconds before she hung up. Tyler's girlfriend Jessica shook her head. That's ice cold. She really doesn't know your birthday? It was last month, I replied. She forgot completely. But she remembered to ask for money 2 weeks later, Alex added. Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Dad. The voicemail was desperate. Jake, we need to meet today. It's urgent. The business is... Just call me back immediately. I returned his call around noon. Dad, what's the emergency? The Morrison contract fell through. We can't secure materials, can't make payroll, and now they're threatening to sue us for breach of contract. That sounds like a serious business problem. Jake, I could lose everything. Dad, with respect, you told me I wasn't your son. Why would someone who's not your son concern himself with your business problems? Because you're a good man, and you know this isn't just about me. I've got 8 employees depending on... Dad, you're attempting to guilt trip the wrong person. You want to know what a good man does? A good man doesn't disown his son over money. A good man doesn't send threatening notes through intermediaries. A good man doesn't try to manipulate his child into being a family bank. Long pause. What do you want from us, Jake? I want you to figure out who you are without my financial support. I want Madison to get legitimate employment. I want Mom to operate a business that actually generates profit. And I want all of you to understand that family relationships aren't financial transactions. And if we do that, then maybe we can discuss being family again, but not before. That afternoon, Mom showed up at my house alone. Alex was overworking on some project proposals, but when he saw her pull up, he grabbed his laptop and headed to the kitchen. I'll be right here if you need backup, he said. Mom looked like she'd aged 5 years in a single week. Jake, can we talk? Just you and me? Sure. We sat on my front porch. She was quiet for a long time before she started speaking. Your father's pride is going to destroy this family, she said finally. Mom, Dad's pride didn't send me that text. Dad's pride didn't write that note. You all made this decision collectively. We were angry. No, you were entitled. There's a significant difference. She started crying. Jake, I know we messed up terribly, but you're destroying us. Mom, I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not building it anymore. There's a difference. Your sister's sleeping in her car now. Her choice. She could get employment, find a roommate, move somewhere more affordable. Instead, she's choosing to be homeless rather than work. She doesn't know how to work, Jake. We never taught her those skills. That was the first honest thing any of them had said throughout this entire situation. Then maybe it's time she learned? Mom sat there crying quietly for a while before she got up to leave. At the door, she turned back. I love you, Jake. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. I love you too, Mom. But love and money aren't the same thing. Took me 32 years to figure that out. 3 weeks later, Alex and I were finishing up a client meeting when my assistant buzzed the intercom. Jake, there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She looks different. Alex grinned. This should be interesting. Madison walked into my office looking like she hadn't slept properly in days. Her usual perfect Instagram appearance was completely gone. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt instead of designer everything. Jake, I got a job. Alex looked up from his laptop. Congratulations. What kind of employment? I'm working at a marketing firm downtown. It's entry level, but they said if I work hard, I can advance. I gestured to a chair. That's excellent, Madison. How's it going? It's really hard. Much harder than I expected. I had no idea how much I didn't know about actual work. She paused. Jake, I owe you a serious apology. For what specifically? For everything. For treating you like a personal bank instead of a brother. For not caring about your life unless I needed something from you. For not even knowing your birthday. She took a deep breath. Alex was completely right. I didn't know anything about you except that you had money. Alex nodded approvingly. This represents genuine progress. I've been attending therapy, she continued. The therapist helped me understand that I was, parasitic. I was living off you without giving anything back to the relationship. For what changed your perspective? I asked. Honestly, being completely broke. Turns out when you can't afford food, you start questioning your life choices pretty quickly. And Dad? Mom? Dad's business is struggling, but he's trying to make it work without loans or credit extensions. Had to sell some equipment, let go of 2 employees. Mom closed the expensive office and is working from home. She's actually making money for the first time in years. And how do you all feel about me now? Madison looked down. We understand why you did it. We're not happy about the consequences, but we understand your reasoning. Dad keeps saying he should have seen it coming. Alex leaned forward. Madison, what's Jake's wife's name? Sarah. She's a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital. You guys met in college but didn't start dating until after graduation. She's originally from Oklahoma. When's his birthday? April 15th. Same day as tax day, which he says is fitting since he's always worried about business finances. What does his company do? Commercial construction projects. You started it because you were frustrated with how inefficient construction management was when you worked for other contractors. Alex looked genuinely impressed. Not bad. How did you learn all that information? I asked questions. Turns out Jake's actually pretty interesting when you're not just trying to get money from him. We talked for another hour. Madison told me about her job, how she'd had to learn basic adult skills like budgeting and cooking, how she'd sold most of her designer possessions to pay rent, how she'd realized that her influencer brand was just an expensive hobby with no real income. Jake, I want to ask you something, and I promise this isn't about money. Okay, do you think, could we try being brother and sister again? Like, actual siblings who talk about life and spend time together sometimes? I looked at Alex, who nodded encouragingly. Madison, you want to know the truth? Yes. I never wanted to stop being your brother. I just got tired of being your bank. She started crying. Not the manipulative crying from before, but genuine tears of remorse. I'm so sorry, Jake. I'm sorry for taking advantage of you. I'm sorry for not appreciating what you did. And I'm really sorry for not being a better sister. Madison, the fact that you're here, that you got employment, that you learned my wife's name, that means something significant. Alex cleared his throat. This is touching and all, but what about your parents? They want to apologize too, but Dad's too proud and Mom's too embarrassed. They know they messed up badly. Tell them something for me, I said. Tell them I'm willing to have a conversation. Not about money, not about business, just about being family. But they need to understand that being family means caring about each other as people, not just financial resources. Madison nodded. I'll tell them exactly that. After she left, Alex and I sat in my office quietly for a while. You think they actually learned their lesson? He asked. Madison definitely did. Mom probably did. Dad, we'll see. You going to help them if they really change? Maybe someday. But they need to prove they can stand independently first. Independence builds character. Alex laughed. Brother, you basically gave your entire family a masterclass in consequences. It's like you're the world's most expensive life coach. A month later, Dad called me. His voice was different, quieter, more humble than I'd ever heard it. Son, I owe you an apology. A real one. I'm listening. I treated you like a resource instead of a person. I took your generosity for granted and then punished you when it wasn't enough. That's not what fathers do. What do fathers do, Dad? They support their sons even when they can't help financially. They're proud of their kids' success instead of jealous of it. They say thank you instead of demanding more. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. Maybe for the first time since I was a teenager. He told me about his struggles, his fears, his regrets. I told him about the pressure I'd felt, how I'd lost myself trying to be everyone's financial solution. Jake, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not for the money, but for having the strength to walk away when we treated you wrong. Dad, I never wanted to walk away from family. I just wanted to be treated like family instead of like a business. I understand that now. 6 months later, we had Thanksgiving dinner together for the first time since the incident. Madison brought her boyfriend, a guy she met at work who had no idea she came from money. Mom cooked everything herself instead of catering it. Dad talked about his business struggles openly instead of pretending everything was perfect. And Alex was there too, because he'd basically become family through all of this. You know what's funny? Madison said during dessert. I'm actually happier now than I was before. Working for my own money feels better than having it handed to me. That's because accomplishment feels better than entitlement, Alex said. Jake tried to tell you that for years. Mom raised her glass. To Jake, for teaching us the difference between being supported and being spoiled. Dad added, and for having the courage to do what needed to be done, even when it hurt. As we sat there, I realized something profound. My family was smaller now. Some relatives still thought I was too harsh, and a few family friends had taken sides. But the people at that table were there because they wanted to be, not because they needed something. Alex was right all those months ago. Sometimes you have to burn down the old structure to build something better. And sometimes the best thing you can do for people you love is stop solving their problems for them. The golden boy learned to say no, and it saved his family from themselves. Send me $3,000 for prom, my sister said. I replied, earn it yourself. A few minutes later, my parents texted, pay or get out of this family. That night, I pressed, cancel, cancel, cancel everything. By 8:30 the next morning. Hey Reddit, Dylan here. Figured I'd finally share a story that's been sitting with me for a while. The kind that starts with family drama and ends with a reality check I didn't see coming. It's not one of those sappy forgiveness tales either. Just a guy realizing that sometimes helping turns into being used. Buckle up. This one got messy. I, Dylan, 35 male, run my own small business, doing all right for myself. Nothing fancy, but I built it from the ground up. No handouts, no shortcuts. Which is probably why what happened that morning pissed me off as much as it did. I was in the middle of a client call when my phone started buzzing like it was trying to self-destruct. I ignored it once, twice, and then again. By the 5th buzz, I thought something had caught fire somewhere. I glanced down, saw my sister's name Lexi, and immediately rolled my eyes. She's 18, senior year, and the kind of person who treats every minor inconvenience like a national crisis. I let the call go to voicemail thinking I'd deal with it later. Then a text popped up. Send me $3,000 for prom. I actually laughed, out loud, during the meeting. My business partner looked at me like I was losing it. I thought maybe she added an extra zero by mistake or it was some stupid joke. So I texted back, You mean $300, right? Nope. She hit me with, no, $3,000. Dress, limo, nails, photos, spa for my skin, hair. I want it to be perfect. I just stared at my phone for a full 30 seconds. $3,000. For a high school dance? I could throw a decent weekend trip for that money and still have cash left for steak. I typed back, you've officially lost your mind. Get a job and earn it. Simple. Direct. End of conversation, right? Wrong. Within a few minutes, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't her. It was my mom. Your sister's worked so hard this year. Don't be selfish. Help her. Then my dad. Pay for her prom, Dylan. It's the right thing to do. The right thing to do. That phrase has been their favorite line since forever. It basically translates to, do what we say, no questions asked. I put the phone face down on the desk and stared at it like it had just insulted me. I'd helped my family plenty. More than I should have, honestly. Every time they said they were tight on bills or needed a little help, I wired money, no hesitation. But $3,000 for a prom? That wasn't help. That was entitlement with glitter on top. The rest of the day was a blur. I kept checking my phone between tasks, hoping someone would text back an apology or at least an ounce of common sense. Nothing. Just silence. Around noon, I got a voicemail from my sister. I didn't even need to hit play. I knew exactly how it'd sound. Whiny, guilt-trippy, dramatic. I still listened anyway, because I'm a glutton for punishment. Her voice blasted through the speaker. You're so selfish, Dylan. It's just prom. Why can't you help me for once? For once. I nearly dropped the phone. For once? I've been paying their bills for years. I'm the one who helped after Dad stopped working. I deleted the voicemail halfway through. By 3, I was too irritated to focus. I closed my laptop and sat there replaying the whole thing in my head. My sister's tone, my parents' texts, all of it screamed one thing. They expected me to say yes. Not hoped, not asked, expected. That's what got under my skin the most. Somewhere along the line, helping turned into obligation. They didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as an open wallet with Wi-Fi. I tried calling my mom just to clear the air. She answered on the second ring, voice already laced with attitude. Are you done ignoring your sister? She snapped. I took a breath. Mom, I'm not paying $3,000 for a high school dance. That's ridiculous. You can afford it, she shot back. You own your own business. It's not like you're struggling. And that doesn't mean I'm financing a circus, I said. She's 18. She can get a part-time job. You don't talk to your family like that, she hissed. We're struggling, Dylan. You have no idea what we've been through. Struggling? I said, half laughing. Then why does she need a designer dress and a limo? Silence. Then she hung up. Not a single, we'll talk later. Just click. Then Dad followed up with, pay for your sister's prom or don't bother calling yourself part of this family. I just stared at the screen, stunned. That wasn't a request. That was a threat. The kind of thing you'd expect from some manipulative ex, not your own parents. I sat there trying to process the audacity of it. After everything I've done for them, all the bills, the so-called emergencies, the times I covered their mistakes, and they still had the guts to throw family in my face like it was some kind of weapon. 5 minutes later, Dad texted again. You're supposed to help. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That one sat in my head for hours. Don't make this harder. Like I was the problem. Like me saying no was some betrayal of the family code. I sat there staring at those messages, the word family bouncing around in my head like a bad echo. It didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like a transaction. For the first time, I started wondering if all my help over the years had just turned into their expectation. Looking back, I probably should have seen it coming. My family's been running on favoritism since my sister learned how to talk. She was the baby, the miracle child, born years after me. The surprise they treated like royalty. I was just the warm-up act. Everything I did was expected, but everything she did was special. That was the pattern. I worked hard. She got praised. I achieved things. She got celebrated. When I got my first full-time job, my parents said, that's nice, just don't forget to help us when we're older. When she got her first social media sponsorship for posting makeup videos, they said, she's going places. It was always like that. Me grinding to prove I was capable. Her getting rewarded just for existing. And the older we got, the worse it got. When she turned 16, my parents surprised her with a used convertible. When I turned 16, I was mowing lawns to save for a secondhand laptop. My mom called it building character. Apparently, I was full of character by the time I hit adulthood. Then came Dad's stroke. I still remember the phone call. Mom's voice was trembling. He collapsed at work. They said it's mild, but he won't be able to go back full time. My gut twisted. No matter how messed up our dynamic was, he was still my dad. I drove straight to the hospital, stayed there for days, handling whatever needed handling. That's where things shifted. Guilt is a funny thing. It can make you do stupid stuff in the name of family. When Dad got discharged, their finances were a mess. Mom couldn't keep up with bills, the mortgage, medical costs. I stepped up. I opened a joint family account with me, listed as the primary holder after Dad's stroke. The bank let me add them as joint users, but since the account was technically tied to my SSN, any large external transfers needed my approval. I figured it was safer that way. I told them, this is for necessities only. Bills, groceries, medication. That's it. For the first year, I kept an eye on everything. Every withdrawal was small and reasonable. $80 for groceries, $120 for electricity, $200 for Dad's checkups. I felt good about it, like I was doing the right thing. I wasn't rich, but my business was finally doing well, and I wanted to take care of them. That's what a decent son does, right? Then life got busy. My business took off. I started managing bigger clients, and I stopped checking the account as much. I trusted them. They'd shown they could handle it responsibly, so I eased off. Big mistake. Slowly, things started to feel off. My sister began posting pictures online. Expensive outfits, fancy brunches, weekend getaways with friends. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she had a job I didn't know about. Maybe my parents were giving her small allowances. But then Mom started calling more often, always with some vague story. We had another unexpected expense, honey. Can you help us out this month? What expense? I'd ask. Oh, just bills. Always bills. Never any specifics. And Dad, he barely talked anymore. Every time I tried asking what was going on, he'd deflect. Your mom's handling it, he'd say, voice flat. Or, it's under control. I told myself not to overthink it. They'd been through enough. Dad couldn't work, Mom was probably stressed, and my sister was young. I kept sending money when they asked. Sometimes I'd ask how the account was doing, and Mom would say, we're careful, don't worry. But I did worry. I just didn't act on it. Looking back, I think I didn't want to know the truth. I wanted to keep believing I was doing something good, that I was the responsible one, holding things together while they tried their best. The idea that they might actually be taking advantage of me was too ugly to process. But things kept stacking up. The calls for money came more frequently. The explanations got vaguer. My sister's lifestyle somehow got flashier, even though she didn't have a job. The math didn't add up, but I ignored it. When you grow up being the problem solver, you start confusing being used with being needed. It's embarrassing to admit it now, but I think part of me liked being the dependable one, the one who could fix things, the one they turned to. It made me feel like I finally mattered in a family that never really saw me unless they wanted something. And yeah, maybe that's why I didn't notice sooner. Because deep down, I didn't want to believe they were taking advantage of me. I wanted to believe they were just struggling, that helping them was the right thing. Turns out, it was just the convenient thing for them. So yeah, call it stupidity, call it denial, whatever you want. I ignored every red flag because I didn't want to face the reality that my family didn't need saving. They just needed someone willing to pay the price for their comfort. And for years, that someone was me. The next morning, I was back at work, trying to get my head straight. I told myself I'd ignore their messages, focus on clients, and move on. Then my phone buzzed with that specific tone I hadn't heard in a long time. My bank alert. I looked down and froze. Alert. Pending external transfer. $5,000. Because I was the primary account holder, the bank froze the transfer and sent me a confirmation alert. I hadn't seen one of those in years. For a second, I thought I misread it. Then I saw the time. 8:42 a.m. Less than 24 hours after my sister demanded $3,000 for prom. My pulse jumped. I'd set that alert years ago to notify me about any withdrawal over $2,500. It was a security measure I completely forgot existed. And now, suddenly, it was flashing at me like a warning siren. I opened my banking app and stared at the pending notification. $5,000. From the joint family account. It wasn't processed yet, just sitting there, waiting for confirmation. My gut twisted. I hadn't touched that account in months, since the account was technically under my name. Any big transfer like that needed my manual approval. They could swipe their debit cards freely for everyday stuff, groceries, gas, whatever. But this was different. It meant someone had tried to send money out of the account completely. Either way, I wasn't about to just hit approve. I called my sister first. She picked up after the second ring, sounding like she'd just woken up. Morning, I said, voice flat. You try to move 5 grand out of the family account? What? She mumbled. No, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Lex. I got a notification. $5,000 pending transfer. I didn't do anything, she said quickly, her tone flipping from sleepy to defensive. Ask Mom. So you have no idea about this? No, she snapped. And stop accusing me of stuff. You're being paranoid. Yeah, I said. Funny how paranoid always ends up being right in this family. She huffed. You're ridiculous, and hung up. Typical. Next up, Mom. I didn't even want to call, but I had to. She answered on the first ring, already in her sweet but manipulative tone. Dylan, how are you? Cut it, I said. Why is there a $5,000 transfer pending from the joint account? There was a pause. Then she said, Oh, that. Don't worry, it's just something we needed to cover. You can go ahead and approve it. Cover what exactly? I asked. You know, bills, repairs, things like that. Bills don't cost 5 grand, Mom. She sighed loudly, like I was the one being unreasonable. Your father's been stressed. Your sister has prom coming up. We're just trying to make things easier. I laughed, but there wasn't a trace of humor in it. So easier means draining the account without asking? Don't be dramatic, she snapped. You act like we're stealing from you. You're not stealing, I said. Watch your mouth, she said coldly. We're family. You wouldn't even have that business if we hadn't supported you. Supported me? I repeated. You mean the moral support of constant guilt tripping? Dylan, you need to calm down. Approve the transfer and stop making everything a fight. I'm not approving anything until you tell me what it's for. Another pause. Then she said, quieter this time. You'll understand when you see the photos. What photos? Your sister's prom. And that was it. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone like it had insulted my intelligence. Photos. She wanted me to approve a $5,000 transfer for prom pictures. I refused it immediately. I didn't even bother calling my dad. He'd just echo her nonsense. Your mother's handling it, or don't stress her out. Same script every time. My brain was running in circles. If they were confident enough to request 5 grand in one shot, how many smaller transactions had slipped past me without alerts? I hadn't checked the detailed history in months, maybe years. I needed answers. Real ones. That's when I thought of Sam. Sam's a longtime friend and my go-to whenever something smells fishy. He's a lawyer, sharp as hell, and not the type to sugarcoat things. I shot him a quick text. Hey man, need legal eyes on something? Might be family related. He replied in seconds. That sounds bad already. Come by the office tonight? 6 feet? Perfect, I wrote back. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus on a single thing. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was another withdrawal. I kept checking the app just to make sure that pending status hadn't switched to approved. It didn't. Not yet. But the timing, the excuses, the casual way Mom talked about it, it all fit too neatly. They weren't panicking because to them, this wasn't stealing. It was normal. It was expected. When 6 rolled around, I drove to Sam's office. He was waiting, sleeves rolled up, sipping coffee like he'd already predicted the mess. What's up? He asked. I laid it all out. The prom text, the guilt tripping, the $5,000 alert. He leaned back. You didn't approve it, right? Of course not. Good, he said. Bring your laptop tomorrow. I'll help you dig through the account history. Let's see what they've been doing. I nodded. Thanks, man. I've got a bad feeling about this. You should, he said. If this isn't their first time, it's going to get ugly. I stopped a $5,000 transfer, but the damage had been happening for a long time. And as I sat there staring at the screen, it hit me. They hadn't just asked for help. They'd built their lifestyle around expecting it. By the next evening, I was done guessing. I drove to Sam's office straight after work, still wearing the same half-ironed shirt from the morning. The whole day had been noise, calls, emails, and that same $5,000 alert sitting in my inbox like a ticking time bomb. I didn't approve it, obviously, but I needed to know what was really going on. No more maybes. When I walked in, he was already behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, glasses low on his nose, staring at his laptop like he was about to cross-examine the bank itself. He nodded at the chair in front of him. You bring the login details? I handed him a folder. Everything's in there. He started typing, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I sat across from him, tapping my foot against the carpet, the silence thick enough to choke on. A few minutes later, he leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the screen. Well, he said slowly, you weren't exaggerating. What do you see? I asked, leaning in. He turned the laptop toward me. Look at this. It's been going on for years. The first few pages looked normal. Small transactions, grocery stores, pharmacies, utility payments. Then the pattern changed. Hundreds turned into thousands. And then there were names that had no business showing up. Jewelry stores, boutique clothing shops, travel agencies, and what looked like a prom event planner. Sam scrolled through the list, his tone even but firm. These charges go back 4 years. Small enough individually that you wouldn't notice, but together? He pulled up the total. We're talking just over $80,000. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen, trying to process the number. $80,000? He nodded. Yep, slow bleed. Probably thought if they kept it under the radar, you'd never check. I rubbed my temples. I feel like an idiot. Honestly, you are, Sam chuckled. But you trusted your family. That's what makes this sting. I've seen many cases like this before. I looked at the breakdown again. Jewelry store charges popped up every few months. Boutique names I didn't recognize. Payments to what looked like a travel agency in Kansas City. Then those tiny, sneaky charges. $300 here, $450 there. Always labeled as household, MISC, or personal expense. Sam kept scrolling. Credit card companies, too. They've been funneling your money to cover their debts. I leaned forward, jaw tightening. So all those times they said they were short on bills or had a medical emergency were lies, Sam said, finishing for me. It hit me hard, but not in the way I expected. I didn't feel sad or broken. I just felt cold, like I'd finally hit the point past disappointment. Sam glanced at me. You want to see the prom thing? I frowned. What do you mean? He highlighted one of the recent transactions. I almost laughed. They didn't even try to hide it. They didn't think they had to, Sam said. They probably assumed you'd never check again. He wasn't wrong. They'd trained me to look the other way, to believe that family helps family meant shut up and pay. I slumped back in the chair, staring at the glowing screen. Over 80 grand, I repeated quietly. That's how much I've basically donated to them. Sam nodded and started printing the records. Each page slid out of the printer with a sharp click, proof of 4 years of manipulation. He handed me a thick stack. I'd keep these safe. You'll need them if things get messy. Messy? I asked. People like that don't just admit they're wrong, he said. They double down. He wasn't wrong about that either. I flipped through the pages, skimming the transactions, the dates, the stores. Every line felt like a slap, a reminder of how blind I'd been. Moms, we had another rough month. Dads, we're struggling to keep up. My sisters, I deserve this. Every word replayed in my head, but now they sounded different. Less like pleas, more like rehearsed lines. All those emergencies? Lies. Every last one of them. I should have felt heartbroken, but I didn't. I was past that. It's like once you see how far someone's willing to go to take advantage of you, the love part just switches off. Inside, I spread the printed papers across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces. Lines of transactions, dates, and charges filled every inch of the surface. Jewelry, boutique, travel, event planner, over and over. It was like watching my own generosity get itemized into luxury goods. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through old text messages from my mom. We're short this month. Can you help with groceries? The car needs repairs. Every single message now had a dollar sign attached to it in my head. Not one was real. I sat there for hours, just looking at it all. My phone buzzed a few times. Mom, Dad, even my sister. I didn't answer. I was done explaining myself to people who only listened when I was paying their bills. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting even. It was about ending it. By midnight, I had everything stacked neatly in a folder. Every printout, every bank record, every lie documented. I stared at the folder for a long time, then set it by the front door. Tomorrow, I was going to visit them. Not to argue or beg for an explanation, just to end this once and for all. The next morning, I woke up early. Didn't even need an alarm. I barely slept, just kept staring at that folder on the table like it was some kind of loaded weapon. By 7, I grabbed it, got in my truck, and started the drive to my parents' place. Their house sat in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Same home sweet home sign they've had since the 90s. The kind of place that looks normal from the outside, but you know the walls have heard a lot of yelling. When I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath, grabbed the folder, and walked up to the door. Before I could knock, my mom opened it like she'd been waiting. "Dylan," she said, all tight smile and fake warmth. "Did you finally calm down?" I stepped inside without answering. The air in there felt thick, not just from the stuffy heater, but from tension. My dad was standing near the window, arms crossed, face unreadable. My sister was on the couch, scrolling her phone like she couldn't care less. Sit down, my mom said. We need to talk. Yeah, I said, dropping the folder on the coffee table. We do. She frowned when she saw the stack of papers. What's that? Proof, I said flatly. Her smile twitched. Proof of what? I sat down, spread the papers out slowly. Let's start with this one. Payments to credit card companies. Over 4 years, you used my money to pay off at least 3 different cards. Then there's the jewelry store charges, the boutique receipts, and oh, I pulled one sheet out and slid it across the table. The prom planner. That one's new. My sister glanced up from her phone for half a second, then looked back down. Not even a flinch. My mom's face went from pale to red in record time. How dare you dig through our finances? She snapped. That's private. I let out a dry laugh. Private? It's my account. You think we're stealing from you? She shot back. Do you want me to read the totals out loud? I said, flipping another page. Because this one here? I tapped the line item. Want to explain that one? My dad finally spoke, his voice low but firm. You're supposed to help us, Dylan. We raised you. You wouldn't even be where you are without us. I turned to him slowly. You mean the same way I helped when I covered your bills after the stroke? When I paid your mortgage twice? Or when I set up this account to keep things afloat while you said you were drowning? He looked away, jaw tight. You don't understand. Debt piles up. We did what we had to do. Yeah, I said. You did it with my money. My mom slammed her hand on the table. You're ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, I cut her off. Everything you've done for me? You mean the lectures, the guilt trips, and the lies? Every time I sent money, you told me it was for groceries or medical bills. Turns out it was to keep your luxury spending alive. She pointed a shaking finger at me. We did it for your sister. She deserves a better start than we gave you. I stared at her, genuinely speechless for a second. A better start? You've already given her everything she's ever wanted. Meanwhile, I had to fight for every inch I got. You didn't even come to my business launch because she had a dance recital. She's our baby, Mom said, like that excused everything. She's 18, I said. She's not a baby. She's rotten spoiled. My sister finally looked up, rolling her eyes. You're being dramatic, she said, voice dripping with attitude. It's just money. I turned to her, calm but sharp. You don't get to say that when it's not your money. She sank back into the couch, muttering something under her breath. I didn't even care what it was. Mom leaned forward, her voice low and trembling. You think you can just walk in here and judge us? You're not perfect either. You cut us off emotionally. You never visit. You act like you're better than us. I leaned back in the chair, folded my arms, and said, You're right. I am better than being used. I worked for everything I have. You turned my help into a paycheck. And now you're angry that the ATM finally stopped spitting cash. That shut her up for a second. Dad tried to step in again. You can't just abandon your family like this, son. I stood up, gathering the papers. You abandoned me first, I said quietly. The moment you decided lying was easier than asking. Mom shot up from the couch. Don't walk out on us, Dylan. You're destroying everything we've built. I paused at the doorway and looked back. No, Mom. You did that the day you taught my sister that love comes with a price tag. Her face froze. My dad looked away. My sister kept scrolling like nothing happened. And just like that, I knew there was nothing left to say. I walked out the door while they yelled behind me. Words like selfish, heartless, and ungrateful echoing through the hallway. None of it stuck. For once, it didn't even hurt. For the first time in years, I felt free. That feeling stuck with me the whole drive home. The yelling, the guilt trips, all of it just faded behind me like static. I didn't feel like a bad son or some heartless jerk. I felt like a guy who'd finally stopped drowning. By the time I got back to my place, I already knew what I needed to do next. The joint account had to go. I logged into the bank and pulled up the same account I'd opened years ago to help them. Because I was the primary holder, closing it was easy. The bank just revoked their access, froze their cards, and wired the remaining balance back to me. Took about 10 minutes to erase 4 years of being their personal ATM. When it was done, I drafted one final text. No long explanation, no speeches, no emotional closure. Just this. Accounts closed. Don't contact me again. I hit send and set the phone down. Didn't even take a full minute for it to start buzzing. First my mom, then my dad, then my sister. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree. Mom's messages came in waves. Dylan, what have you done? You're being cruel. We have bills to pay. Dad's tone was colder. This isn't the way to handle things. You're tearing the family apart. Don't do something you'll regret. Then came my sister, of course. Wow, you're seriously pathetic. You ruined everything for me. I hope you're happy, loser. I watched the messages flood in, one after another. Then I did what I should have done years ago. I blocked them. All of them. Texts, calls, emails, gone. The silence that followed felt almost unreal. For weeks, my phone didn't buzz. No emergencies, no guilt trips, no worse struggling. For the first time in my adult life, I could actually breathe without feeling like I owed someone an apology for being successful. I poured myself into my work. My business grew, clients kept coming in, and my days were quieter. Not peaceful right away, just quiet in that weird way when your brain's still waiting for chaos that never comes. Every once in a while, I'd wonder what they were doing. Not because I missed them, I didn't, but because curiosity's a hard habit to kill. I never reached out, though. I'd made my line clear. About 3 months later, I got my answer anyway. It came from my cousin, Tyler, one of the few relatives who still had a functioning moral compass. He called one afternoon while I was on lunch break. "Hey, man," he said carefully. "You hear what's going on with your folks?" I frowned. "No. Why?" "They, lost the house." I stopped mid-bite. "What do you mean, lost it?" "Foreclosure. Apparently they couldn't keep up with payments. Moved into some small apartment near downtown." I leaned back in my chair. "You're kidding," he sighed. "Wish I was. They filed for bankruptcy last month." I didn't say anything for a moment. Not because I was shocked, more like because I wasn't. Deep down, I'd seen it coming the whole time. You can only fake stability for so long before reality catches up. Tyler kept talking. "Your sister's working now, though. Retail job at one of those clothing chains. First time she's ever had a job, I think." That one actually made me smirk. Guess the prom fund finally ran dry. He let out a short laugh. "Yeah, man. Life hit him hard." We talked a few more minutes, mostly small stuff, then hung up. I just sat there for a while after, staring out the window. The sky looked clearer that day. Maybe it was just in my head, but everything felt lighter. They'd burned through all the money. Lost the house they bragged about for years. And the same sister who called me selfish was now folding clothes for minimum wage. I didn't feel joy about it. No part of me was sitting there celebrating their downfall. What I felt was closer to clarity, like the universe finally adjusted its balance sheet. For years, I carried them, convinced myself I was being a good son, that helping them was what family meant. But now, with the noise gone, I realized something simple and ugly. They never wanted me to stand beside them. They just wanted me to hold them up. And the moment I stopped, they collapsed. That's not family. That's dependency dressed up as love. Weeks passed, then months. Life moved on. I started sleeping better, ate better, even found myself laughing more. My business hit new highs because I wasn't constantly bleeding money or energy trying to save people who didn't want saving. Never again. Somewhere in that silence, I realized something I wish I'd understood years ago. Family doesn't mean lifelong debt. It's supposed to be built on love, not obligation. On respect, not manipulation. The moment money became the glue, it stopped being family. So yeah, I lost them. But I gained something better. Myself. Months passed since I walked out of that house. And honestly, I didn't realize how much tension I'd been carrying until it was gone. No late-night guilt calls. No, we're short on bills texts. No fake emergencies. Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel lonely, just peaceful. Every so often, my cousin Tyler would check in with updates. I didn't ask, but he'd tell me anyway, like he was trying to keep me in the loop without dragging me back into it. Then one afternoon, about 8 months after I went no contact, I heard a knock at the door. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped a little. There they were, my mom and my sister, standing side by side like they'd practiced the pose. My mom was holding a small bag, like she'd brought something, probably an emotional prop. My sister had her arms crossed, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy out. I opened the door halfway. "What do you want?" Mom's smile was tight, rehearsed. "Can we come in? We just want to talk." "Talking's not usually what you come here for," I said. She sighed, her voice soft. "Please, Dylan. We've made mistakes. We just want to fix things." I looked at both of them, trying to read their faces. My sister couldn't even make eye contact. She was scanning my porch like she'd rather be anywhere else. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let them in. Mom immediately launched into it. "We've been through a lot since you left," she said, sitting down. "Your father's been sick again. We lost the house. Things have been hard." "I heard," I said flatly. She nodded quickly, like she was hoping sympathy might crack me open. We've realized how wrong we were. You were only trying to help, and we took advantage of that. We're truly sorry." My sister finally spoke up, her tone robotic. "Yeah, we shouldn't have said those things to you." It almost sounded believable. Almost. Then my mom pulled an envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. "We're trying to get back on our feet, but the debts, well, they're piling up again. The bank's being impossible. We just need a little help this one last time." There it was, the real reason for the visit. I leaned back and stared at them both. "You know, I was actually waiting to see how long it'd take before you asked for money again." Mom's face went pale. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair," I said. "You've been playing the same game for years. You cry, apologize, and then hold out your hand." Her voice trembled. "You don't understand what we're going through." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, standing up. "You're still trying to make your problems my responsibility?" My sister's mask cracked then. She dropped the fake calm and sneered. "You're pathetic. You sit here acting all high and mighty because you have money, but you're just a selfish jerk who abandoned his family." I turned to her, calm as ever. "You're folding jeans at a store because you never learned the value of work. Don't talk to me about responsibility." Her jaw dropped, and for once, she didn't have a comeback. Mom stood up too, tears welling. "You've changed, Dylan. You used to care about us." "I cared," I said, "until I realized caring was just another way for you to control me." They both stared at me, waiting for me to cave. I didn't. I pointed toward the door. "We're done here." My sister muttered something under her breath as she stormed out. Mom lingered for a second, maybe hoping I'd stop her, maybe realizing I wouldn't. Then she left too, pulling the door closed behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't painful. It was relief, pure and simple. I stood there for a while, looking at the empty spot where that envelope sat on the table. I could have helped them. I had the money, but that's not what they needed. What they needed was to finally live in the world they built, without my safety net. That night, I sat outside on my porch, watching the sun go down. The air was cool, quiet. My phone stayed silent, and I hoped it would stay that way. I thought about how everyone says family's everything, but no one talks about how sometimes family's the thing that drains you dry. Boundaries don't make you cruel. They make you sane. And yeah, they still probably tell people I'm cold, selfish, heartless. But I sleep fine, because at the end of the day, they called me selfish for protecting my money. But I'm not the one who stole from family. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. I found out my parents had transferred the family metal shop to my brother. So I quit working 80 hours a week for free. A week later, Dad called in panic. "Our biggest client is about to leave." I answered calmly, "Let the air handle it." All right, Reddit. I spent a decade working in my family's metal shop. No paycheck, just room and board, and vague promises about building equity. Then I found the succession plan tucked behind some files. My parents were handing everything to my younger brother who can't even deal with the machines. So I walked away. Now that they're in trouble, they're begging me to come back. Here's what went down. I'm Owen, 32 male. 10 years of my life disappeared into that shop in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The industrial zone near the bay where everything smells like cutting fluid and burnt metal. That's where I spent my 20s working myself into the ground for a business I thought would eventually be mine. I started right after finishing trade school. My grandfather founded the place in 1978, started with one CNC machine and a dream. By the time I came aboard, we had 6 CNC mills, 3 lathes, a full welding setup, and contracts with half the manufacturing plants in northeastern Wisconsin. I worked 80-hour weeks. Not an exaggeration. I'd show up at 5 in the morning to prep machines, load programs, get the first run going. Spent my days operating CNCS, TIG welding custom brackets, programming tool paths, dealing with suppliers, and managing clients who needed impossible tolerances on parts they designed wrong. I'd leave around 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later if we had a rush order. My hands were permanently stained with cutting oil. I had scars from metal shavings and burns from welding spatter. My back was shot from lifting steel plates, and my hearing was half gone from machine noise. My social life was non-existent. Friends stopped inviting me out after the 50th time I said I couldn't make it. Dating was a joke. Can't exactly maintain a relationship when you're married to a milling machine. But I kept going because I thought I was building my future. My parents said all the right things. This is our family legacy. You're investing in yourself. One day this will all pay off for you. I ate it up like an idiot. Here's the thing. There's always a favorite kid. And brother, I wasn't it. My brother Mason is 3 years younger than me. 29 now. He'd roll in around 10:30, grab coffee from the fancy machine my parents bought for the office, spend an hour scrolling through his phone, maybe answer an email or two, then disappear for a 2-hour lunch. He'd come back around 3, hang out in the climate-controlled office, then bounce by 4:30. His contribution? Attending the occasional client meeting where I'd already done all the technical work, taking credit for projects I designed and fabricated, posting on the company's Instagram with captions like, "Another successful build by our team," while standing next to parts I'd made. And get this, my parents paid him a salary, 45 grand a year for part-time Instagram modeling. Meanwhile, I got room and board at my parents' house. No cash, no health insurance, no 401k, just a bedroom and whatever leftovers were in the fridge. Mason drove a newish truck. My parents bought it for him because he needed reliable transportation for client meetings. I drove a 20-year-old beater that burned oil and had a check engine light on since 2008. But I didn't complain. I kept my head down and worked. I figured actions spoke louder than words. I thought if I just kept proving myself, eventually my parents would see my value. Nope. Turns out I was building someone else's kingdom. Last month, everything changed. I was in the office around midnight finishing paperwork for a big medical device contract. We just delivered 200 custom titanium components with tolerances tighter than anything we'd done before. I was filing the quality control documents when I noticed an envelope tucked behind some old binders. Had a red confidential stamp across the front. I handled most of the shop's administrative stuff. Seeing something marked confidential that I'd never seen before set off alarm bells. I opened it. Inside was a succession plan dated 4 months earlier. Legal documents, transfer of ownership papers. My parents were transferring 100% ownership of the business to Mason. My name didn't appear anywhere except on the employee roster. Yeah, employee roster. 10 years of my life. 80-hour weeks. Thousands of parts fabricated. Millions in contracts I'd landed. And according to these papers, I was nothing. Just labor. I stood there reading it over and over. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the dehumidifier. The anger came first. That burning feeling in your chest when you realize you've been played. Then came the sadness. When you understand your own parents looked at everything you did and decided it wasn't worth anything. I thought about all those mornings I dragged myself out of bed at 4:30. All the weekends I spent in the shop while everyone else was at Lambeau Field. The friends who stopped calling. The relationships that never happened. The life I'd given up. The sacrifices. And they decided Mason deserved it. Mason, who couldn't program a CNC to save his life. Mason, who didn't know the difference between 6061 and 7075 aluminum. The guy who'd probably never spent more than 30 hours in the shop in any given week. I took the documents home. Didn't sleep. Just sat in my room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Around 3 in the morning, I made a decision. I was done. The next morning, I got up at my usual time, drove to the shop like always, but instead of starting the machines, I sat down in the office and wrote out my resignation on the company letterhead. I quit. Good luck running this place without me. You're going to need it. I left the letter on my dad's desk, grabbed my personal tools, my grandfather's old welding helmet that he'd given me when I started, and a photo of him and me from my first week. Then I walked out, drove away while the sun was coming up over the bay. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't have to be anywhere at 5 in the morning. Didn't have to answer to anyone. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I crashed at my buddy Adam's place. He had a couch and didn't ask too many questions. I spent my time trying to figure out what to do next. At 32 with no real savings and a decade of unpaid labor, my options felt limited. Then exactly 8 days after I quit, my phone rang. My dad. His voice sounded strained, almost panicked. "Owen, are you serious? Where have you gone? We need you back right now. The Precision Dynamics account. They're threatening to pull out. They're saying quality's dropped and nobody's responding to their technical questions. We can't afford to lose them." Precision Dynamics, our biggest client, medical device manufacturer. They accounted for about 40% of our revenue. High tolerance work, complex parts, demanding specs. I'd built that relationship over 4 years. I let the silence sit for a moment. A week ago, I would have rushed back to fix everything, but not anymore. "Let Mason handle it," I said calmly. "He's the owner now, right? I'm sure he'll figure it out." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel guilty. But hanging up on my dad wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. My phone blew up after that call. My mom. My dad again. Text messages from Mason that started with, "What's your problem?" and escalated to, "You're going to regret this." I ignored all of them. Adam walked into the living room. "Everything good, man?" "Yeah. Just my family realizing they can't run their business without me." "About time you walked away from that situation," he said. "I've been watching you kill yourself for that shop for years." "For what?" "Nothing." Adam was a union electrician, made good money, had benefits, worked his 40 hours, and went home. He'd been telling me for years I was getting screwed. 3 days later, I was getting food at this little diner on the east side when I saw my parents walk in. My mom spotted me first. Her face went through about 5 different emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt, then just cold. They walked over to my booth. My dad stayed standing, tried to loom over me like that would intimidate me back into line. "We need to talk," he said. "Not really," I replied, focusing on my eggs. "You're being childish, Owen. The business needs you. Your family needs you." Funny. The succession plan didn't mention anything about me being needed. Just said Mason gets everything. My mom jumped in. "You weren't supposed to see that yet. We were going to discuss it with you properly." "But when? After another 5 years of free labor?" "You lived in our house," my dad said. "Rent-free. We fed you. That's not nothing. I worked 80 hours a week for 10 years. I brought in Precision Dynamics. I landed the contracts with Badger Manufacturing and Superior Components. I designed the custom jigs that increased our efficiency by 30%. I trained every new employee. And you think room and board covers that?" Other people in the diner were starting to look over. My dad's face was turning red. "Mason is your brother," my mom said. "He needs the stability more than you. You're capable. You can make it on your own. He needs structure." "Yeah, that's the problem," I interrupted. "You handed him everything, including 10 years of my work." My dad leaned in closer. "If you don't come back, the business will fail. Is that what you want? To destroy your grandfather's legacy out of spite?" That one almost got to me. But then I thought about Mason posting Instagram stories from Lambeau Field while I was working overtime. Thought about him driving that new truck while I scraped together gas money. "No," I said. "You did that when you decided I wasn't worth including in the future of a business I built. Now, if you'll excuse me, my eggs are getting cold." They stood there for another few seconds. My mom looked like she wanted to say something else, but my dad grabbed her arm and pulled her away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandfather. He'd built that shop from nothing. He used to tell me stories about the early days. How he saved up to buy that first CNC machine. How he built relationships with clients based on quality and trust. He'd had a journal. I remembered seeing it years ago when I was helping organize the attic. Never really looked at it closely, but now I was curious. I drove back to my parents' house at 2 in the morning, parked down the street, snuck into the detached garage where they stored old stuff, found the boxes from the attic. It took me an hour, but I found the journal. Leather cover, pages yellowed with age, my grandfather's handwriting. I sat in my truck with a flashlight reading page after page. He'd documented everything. The struggles of starting out, his philosophy on business, his thoughts on family and legacy. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. Tucked between 2 pages was a handwritten agreement dated 1991. The language was clear. "This business belongs to those who build it. Anyone who gives their sweat and skill to keep this shop running deserves to share in its success. No one should claim another man's work as their own." My grandfather had wanted equity, fairness. He'd wanted the business to go to whoever actually did the work, not just whoever happened to be the favorite. I took photos of every page with my phone. This changed everything. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Eric. Young guy, maybe 35, ran a small practice in Howard. Adam's cousin had used him for a contract dispute and said he was good. I walked into his office carrying my grandfather's journal and a folder of documents I'd printed out. He went through everything methodically. After about 90 minutes, he looked up at me. "This agreement from your grandfather," he said, tapping the journal. "It's not a formal legal document, but it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with your documented contributions, we might have a case." Might? We need to prove 3 things. First, that you were the primary driver of the business's success. Second, that the current succession plan violates your grandfather's documented wishes. Third, that your brother is unfit to run the company. "The third part won't be hard," I said. Eric smiled. "We need evidence, though. Everything you can get. Customer testimonials, financial records, proof that the business depended on you specifically." "I might have something there," I said. I spent the next week gathering evidence like my life depended on it. Went through old emails I'd saved. Found messages from clients praising my work specifically. One from the precision dynamics engineer. Owen, your attention to detail on these parts is why we keep coming back. You understand our specs better than anyone. Another from Badger Manufacturing. We tried 3 other shops before finding you guys. Owen's technical knowledge solved problems our own engineers couldn't figure out. I made spreadsheets showing the business's growth over my 10 years versus the previous decade. Revenue nearly tripled. Client retention went from 60% to 92%. We'd expanded into medical device manufacturing, aerospace components, and precision automotive parts. All sectors I'd broken into. Then I dug into the financial records. I still had access to old bank statements I'd saved on a thumb drive. Started going through Mason's company card charges. What I found was impressive. I mean impressively criminal. Mason had been using the company card like his personal ATM. Charges at Kohl's, Best Buy, restaurants nowhere near our clients. Season tickets to Packers games marked as client entertainment, even though we had email records showing those clients didn't attend. A 5-day trip to Door County charged as a business conference during a week when no industry conferences were happening. My favorite was a $4,000 home theater system delivered to his apartment, listed as office equipment. I organized everything, made copies, took everything to Eric. He whistled when he saw the financial evidence. This is significant, Owen. This is about fiduciary responsibility. If we can prove your brother misused company funds, it strengthens our argument that he's unfit to own the business. Over the next few weeks, I kept building the case. Eric wanted more proof that my departure was impacting the business. I called some former coworkers. There was this woman named Caroline. She ran quality control. We'd worked together for 7 years. Owen, honest to God, it's chaos without you, she said. Mason's trying to run jobs he doesn't understand. Last week, he programmed a mill wrong and wrecked a $50,000 titanium workpiece. Your dad lost his mind. We're 3 weeks behind on the precision dynamics order, and they're threatening to leave. Would you be willing to document that? Absolutely. I got similar responses from 2 other employees. They all agreed to provide written statements. Then I got a call that changed everything. Frank Palmer. He was my grandfather's best friend and the shop's first employee. Retired 5 years ago, but still lived in Green Bay. Owen, I heard what's happening with your folks in the business. Yeah, it's a mess, Frank. Your grandfather would be ashamed of them. He specifically told me he wanted that shop to go to whoever put in the work. That was his whole philosophy. He wrote that down, actually, in his journal. I found it. Good. That journal has weight. Listen, I have something that might help you. Frank lived in a small house near the airport. I drove over that afternoon. He was waiting on his porch. He led me inside to his garage workshop. Been cleaning out old stuff. Found these. He handed me a box of photographs. Photos from the shop's early days. My grandfather operating that first CNC machine. Then photos from throughout the years, including dozens from my time there. Your grandfather took these himself, Frank said. You'll notice something about these photos from your years. I looked through them. Photo after photo showed me working, operating machines, welding, programming, meeting with clients. In a lot of them, my grandfather was in the background, watching me work with this proud expression. He knew you were the one, Frank said. Told me multiple times. Frank, he'd say. Owen's got it. He's got the work ethic, the skill, the dedication. I felt a lump in my throat. Why didn't he put it in writing then? Make it official? He did. Or he tried. He was working on updated succession documents right before he died. Had an appointment with his lawyer scheduled. But the heart attack got him first. Your parents must have pushed through their own plan after. Frank pulled out one more thing. An old file folder. These are contracts your grandfather signed, going back 30 years. Look at the language in the early ones versus the later ones I looked through the contracts. Frank was right. The progression was clear. My grandfather had been building towards something more equitable. Eric nearly jumped out of his chair when I showed him the new evidence. This is exactly what we needed. The photos establish a clear pattern. Your grandfather's noted intentions, supported by his friend's testimony, give weight to the journal entry. We're not just arguing about inheritance anymore. We're arguing about honoring a founder's documented wishes. He laid out the plan. We'd file a lawsuit to invalidate the succession plan based on my grandfather's agreement. We'd argue I was the rightful heir based on my contributions. And we'd use Mason's financial mismanagement as evidence he shouldn't be in charge. But Owen, I need you to understand something, Eric said. This is going to get ugly. Your family will fight back. They'll try to paint you as greedy or vindictive. Are you ready for that? I thought about it for seconds. 10 years of my life. 80-hour weeks. No pay, no recognition. Yeah, I was ready. Let's do it, I said. He filed the lawsuit 2 days later. It laid out everything: my grandfather's journal and documented philosophy, Frank's testimony, my 10 years of contributions, the financial records showing Mason's misuse of funds, photos spanning a decade. We weren't messing around. My parents got served 3 days after we filed. Then Mason. My phone started blowing up again. Texts from my mom. Voicemails from my dad. Mason sent me a message calling me every name in the book. I blocked his number and kept moving forward. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I couldn't sleep. Spent my nights at Adam's place gaming or watching movies, trying to distract myself. The shop was falling apart without me. I heard about it through Caroline, who'd text me updates. Mason tried to run the new aerospace job today. Messed up the tool offsets and scrapped 3 parts. Customers furious. Your dad hired some guy to replace you. He quit after 2 days. Said Mason was impossible to work with. Precision Dynamics officially pulled their account. They're going with Milwaukee Precision Manufacturing instead. Each message was vindicating, but also painful. That shop was my grandfather's legacy. Watching them destroy it hurt more than I expected. One afternoon, I was at the Quick Trip getting coffee when I ran into Mason. He was getting energy drinks. He saw me and his face twisted into something ugly. "This is all your fault," he said loud enough that other customers looked over. "How do you figure? The business is falling apart because you're too much of a baby to handle not being the favorite son." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Mason, you couldn't program a CNC if your life depended on it. The business is falling apart because you're incompetent, not because I left." His face went red. "I'm running that shop just fine. You lost Precision Dynamics. They were 40% of our revenue. How's that fine? We'll find other clients." "With what quality? You scrapped 3 aerospace parts yesterday because you can't set up a job correctly." He stepped closer, tried to get in my face. "You're going to lose this lawsuit. Then you'll come crawling back, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are." "Good talk, Mason." I walked past him. No point engaging with someone who couldn't see reality. 2 days before the hearing, Frank called me. "Owen, I found something else. Was going through more of your grandfather's old files. He kept records of who worked on what projects. And made a spreadsheet. For every major project over the last 10 years, I noted who the primary operator was. Want to guess the result? I'm hoping it's good news. 93% of projects. You were the primary or sole operator on 93% of jobs over the past decade. Can you testify to that?" "Already told your lawyer I'm available." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep at all. Just lay on Adam's couch staring at the ceiling. The courthouse in Green Bay was this old building downtown. I got there an hour early. Sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the bay through the buildings. Eric showed up. We went over everything one more time. "Your family's lawyer is going to try to paint you as bitter. Don't give them ammunition. Be professional." My parents and Mason arrived right before the hearing started. They had some lawyer from Milwaukee with them. We all filed into the courtroom. The judge was this older woman, maybe 60, with short gray hair and reading glasses. Judge Denise Porter. She looked stern, but fair. The hearing started. Eric went first. He presented everything. My grandfather's journal, Frank's testimony about my grandfather's intentions, and the statistical breakdown, the photos, client testimonials, employee statements. Then he showed the financial evidence. Mason's company card charges. $75,000 in personal expenses over 3 years. Every receipt blown up on the screen. The courtroom went quiet. "Your Honor, these expenses were charged to company accounts with no legitimate business purpose," Eric said. "Personal electronics, entertainment, travel unrelated to any business activity." Back and forth it went. Every charge their lawyer tried to justify. Eric dismantled each justification with documentation. Then came testimony. I went first. Eric asked about my history with the business, my relationship with my grandfather, my contributions. "I believed I was building something," I said. "I thought my work mattered. When I found the succession plan, it felt like my entire adult life had been a lie." Their lawyer cross-examined me. Tried to make it seem like I was just angry. "I was 22 when I started," I said. "I trusted my parents. They said I was building equity, that this was a family business and we'd all benefit. I didn't think I needed a contract with my own family." "But you never asked for ownership documents?" "No, because I trusted them." The judge made a note. Frank testified next. Talked about working with my grandfather for 30 years. About how my grandfather valued hard work and fairness. Owen's grandfather told me directly, multiple times, that Owen was the future of that shop. Mason took the stand after that. Their lawyer asked softball questions. I've been modernizing our approach, Mason said, building our online presence, developing strategic partnerships. Eric's cross-examination was brutal. Can you name 3 clients you've personally brought to the company? Mason hesitated. I've been working on several prospects. Names? I don't have them memorized right now. Can you describe the setup process for a CNC mill? Another hesitation. That's what our operators do. You're claiming you're fit to run a metal fabrication shop, but you don't know how to set up the primary equipment? I handle the business side. What was last quarter's revenue? I'd have to check the records. You don't know basic information about the business you're claiming to be fit to own? Mason got defensive, started making excuses, said he delegated technical details. High-level strategy that resulted in losing 40% of the company's revenue within 3 weeks of the primary operator leaving. That was sabotage. How is leaving a job sabotage? Did my client sign a contract forcing him to work there? Mason didn't have an answer. The judge called a recess. Eric pulled me aside. That went well. Your brother's testimony helped us more than hurt us. When we reconvened, the judge looked at both sides. I'm going to take 3 days to review all evidence and testimonies. I'll issue a ruling by Friday. Court is adjourned. 3 days. 72 hours to find out if 10 years of my life meant anything or nothing. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. Caroline kept texting me updates from the shop. Your dad hasn't been in for 2 days. Your mom's running around trying to manage things. She doesn't know what she's doing. Mason came in this morning, lasted an hour, left after the Badger manufacturing rep showed up. Another employee quit, said he's not staying if Mason's in charge. The business was in freefall. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt sad. My grandfather had built something real, and they were destroying it through incompetence. Friday morning arrived. Eric called me at 7. Be at the courthouse by 9. Judge Porter is ready to rule. I got there early. Then Adam showed up. Thought you might want some backup. You didn't have to come. Yeah, I did. You're my friend. We walked into the courthouse together. My parents and Mason were already there with their lawyer. They looked tired, stressed. My mom had been crying. Frank showed up right before we went in, gave me a firm handshake. Your grandfather would be proud, Owen, no matter what happens in there. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Porter came in carrying a stack of papers. Her face was unreadable. I've reviewed all evidence and testimonies presented in this case, she began. This involves complex questions of family business succession, founder intent, and fiduciary responsibility. My heart was hammering. The plaintiff's grandfather clearly documented his philosophy about business ownership. While his journal entry is not a formal legal document, it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with testimony from the founder's longtime associate and documented progression toward employee ownership, the founder's wishes are evident. She paused. The evidence of the plaintiff's contributions is overwhelming. Client testimonials consistently credit him specifically. Employee statements confirm his role as the primary operator. Statistical analysis shows he was responsible for 93% of production over the past decade. His departure resulted in immediate operational collapse. These demonstrate that the plaintiff was the functional operator and driver of business success. I felt hope starting to build. Regarding the defendant's fitness to run the business, I find the evidence deeply concerning. Mason's face was red. My mom was panicking. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The succession plan transferring 100% ownership to the defendant is invalidated as contrary to documented founder intent and inequitable given the plaintiff's contributions. I couldn't breathe. However, given the current state of the business, including significant debt, operational deterioration, and loss of major clients, I am ordering the business to be sold. Proceeds will be divided equally between both children after debts and the defendant's improper expenses are settled. The gavel came down. I'd won. We filed out in silence. My parents left quickly. Mason shot me one last hateful look, then stormed off. Eric shook my hand. Congratulations, Owen. That's about as clear a victory as you could hope for. What happens now? The business gets appraised and put on the market. Could take a few months. After Mason reimburses those expenses and debts are covered, you're probably looking at somewhere around $50,000 to $70,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to start over. Adam and I went to a diner afterward, had coffee at 11 in the morning. How do you feel? Adam asked. I don't know. Relieved, sad, angry, all of it. You did the right thing. Yeah, but it cost me my family. They cost themselves your family when they decided to use you for 10 years. Don't forget that. He was right, but it still hurt. The business sold 6 weeks later. Some manufacturing company from Milwaukee bought it, mostly for the client list and equipment. They kept Caroline and a couple other employees. My parents and Mason lost money once all the debts were calculated. My share after everything was settled came to $63,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start fresh. I started looking at commercial real estate around Green Bay. Found a small space in Ashwaubenon, about 1,200 square feet. Concrete floors, roll-up door, decent power, perfect for a small fabrication shop. Signed a lease, bought some used equipment. Spent about half my money on equipment and the lease deposit. I named the shop Palmer Precision, after my grandfather. Felt right. The first few weeks were just setup, getting equipment installed and calibrated, building a basic website, getting licensed and insured. Then I started making parts. Small stuff at first. Posted on social media. Let people know I was open for business. The response surprised me. A contractor called about custom brackets. A boat shop needed stainless steel fittings. A gym wanted custom weight equipment. Small jobs, but they added up. Word spread. People remembered my work. 3 weeks in, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Owen? This is Wayne from Precision Dynamics. My heart rate picked up. Wayne was their senior engineer. The guy I'd worked with for 4 years. Wayne, how's it going? Good. Listen, I heard you started your own shop. We're not happy with Milwaukee Precision. You interested in doing work for us again? Absolutely. That order became my first major contract. I worked 18-hour days building those parts. Every dimension perfect. Delivered them 2 days early. Wayne called the day after they received the order. This is exactly what we needed. Let's talk about bringing you back as our primary vendor. Just like that, I had my anchor client back. I hired Caroline 2 months after opening. The Milwaukee company had let her go when they restructured. I know you're small, she said, but I'd rather work for someone who knows what he's doing. I can't match what you were making yet, but I can offer a percentage of profits once we're established. Deal. Having Caroline changed everything. She handled quality control and secondary operations, freed me up to program and run the CNC, take on more complex jobs. We worked in sync. The business grew steadily. More clients. Better projects. I wasn't getting rich, but I was making enough to live on and reinvest. Most importantly, I was building something that was actually mine. I saw my parents once after the verdict, ran into them at Festival Foods about 5 months later. We passed each other in the aisle. My mom looked away immediately. My dad nodded slightly but didn't speak. I nodded back and kept walking. There wasn't anything to say. Mason, I heard through town gossip, moved to Milwaukee. Couldn't handle everyone in Green Bay knowing what he'd done. Last I heard, he was working retail. One afternoon about 8 months after opening, a woman came into the shop. Mid-30s, carrying blueprints. Are you Owen? That's me. I'm Nicole. I'm opening a coffee roastery in Des Peres. Need custom stainless steel equipment and fittings. Someone told me you do quality work. We talked for an hour about her project. She was passionate about what she was building. I can do it, I said. When do you need delivery? 2 months? I did the job. Built everything to spec. Delivered on time. She was thrilled. Sent me photos of her roastery's opening day. Nicole started stopping by the shop sometimes. Brought samples of whatever coffee blend she was roasting. We'd talk about running small businesses, about the struggles and victories. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Talk about maybe doing more work together. First real date I'd had in over 10 years. It's been 18 months now since I left the family business. Palmer Precision is doing well. Steady income, growing client base, good reputation. I work hard, but it's different now. I take days off. I see friends. I have an actual life. Nicole and I are still together. Her roastery is thriving. Sometimes we talk about our futures, about what we're building together. It's nice having someone who understands what it's like to build something from scratch. My relationship with my parents is basically non-existent. We don't talk, don't see each other. Part of me wishes it could be different, but a bigger part of me knows they made their choice. I think about my grandfather often, wonder what he'd think about all this. Sometimes I pull out his journal and read his entries. Late at night in my workshop, I feel his presence. Like he's there with me, nodding approval. This workshop isn't his factory. It's smaller, newer, but it's mine, built by my hands. Nobody can take that from me. 18 months turned into 2 years, then 2.5. Palmer Precision kept growing. I hired 2 more people, a kid named Corey, fresh out of tech school, who reminded me of myself at that age, and Tommy, a retired machinist who got bored of retirement. We were a solid crew. The shop wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Then one Tuesday morning, I got this bomb. I was programming a toolpath when my phone rang. Unknown number. Owen Palmer? Speaking. This is Andrew Harlan. I'm the owner of Harlan Manufacturing. We bought your family's old shop about 2 years ago. I felt a weird twist in my stomach. Okay, I'll be direct. We're shutting down that facility. It's been nothing but problems since we bought it. But I've been hearing good things about your operation. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in acquiring some equipment before we auction everything off. What kind of equipment? There's a newer CNC lathe, barely used. Some welding equipment. A few jigs and fixtures. I know you probably have history with the place. Thought I'd give you first option. I drove over that afternoon. The shop looked different, emptier, but there was equipment still there, including my grandfather's original CNC mill from the 80s. I'd learned on that machine. Spent hundreds of hours running parts while my grandfather watched and coached. It was obsolete by modern standards, but seeing it sitting there hit different. That old mill, I said to Andrew. It's not on your list to sell. That dinosaur? It's not even worth the cost to haul it away. We were going to scrap it. I'll take it. And the lathe. And those fixtures over there. We worked out a deal. He practically gave me everything. I had everything hauled to Palmer Precision. The new lathe went into production immediately. But the old CNC mill, my grandfather's machine, I set that up in a corner. Restored it over a few weeks. Got it running smooth. Didn't plan to use it for production. Too slow for modern work. But I wanted it operational. I wanted it in my shop. A physical connection to my grandfather. Frank came by the day I finished restoring it. He walked up to the old machine and ran his hand over it like he was greeting an old friend. Haven't seen this beauty in years, he said. Your grandfather was so proud when he bought this. He spent months learning how to program it. I learned on this machine. Frank turned to look at the rest of my shop. He'd be proud of this, Owen. Really proud. 3 years ago, I was working 80-hour weeks for nothing. Living in my parents' house, no money, no life, no future that was actually mine. Now I owned a business, had a relationship, had a life worth living. The lawsuit didn't just get me money. It got me freedom. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. My family sent a group message. We've talked, and we think it's best if you step away for now. No explanation, no gratitude, just a dismissal. I replied, understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family entirely. Take care. That night at 3:17 a.m., I closed their $87,000 fund with a single click. By sunrise, my phone had 89 missed calls. My dad's voicemail said, "What happened?" The bank flagged everything. So, yeah, this happened about a year ago, but I'm finally ready to share this story. Sorry if this gets long, but I need to get this off my chest because honestly, it's been eating at me for months. It was a Thursday night around 7 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd just gotten home from a brutal client meeting that ran 3 hours longer than planned. I was heating up some leftover curry and thinking about finishing this quarterly report for my consulting firm when my phone buzzed. Group message. The whole family was in there. Mom, Dad, my Aunt Carol, even Uncle Jim, who never really participates in these digital family discussions. The message was from Mom. Short and brutally direct. We've discussed it, and we think it's best if you step away from the family for now. Rebecca needs space. We all do. I just stared at my phone for like a full minute. The kitchen was dead silent except for the microwave humming. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My Aunt Carol reacted with a thumbs up emoji within 30 seconds. Just like that. A simple thumbs up to cutting me out of the family, like I was some toxic acquaintance they needed to block. Uncle Jim added a, "This is hard but necessary" message. Dad stayed silent, which somehow hurt more than if he'd piled on. I sat down at my kitchen table, curry getting cold, and typed back, "Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family. Take care." I wanted to say more. I wanted to ask what I'd done wrong, wanted to defend myself, wanted to point out the irony of them cutting off their primary financial support, but I didn't. I hit send and put my phone face down on the counter. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that message over and over. The casualness of it, the finality, the coordinated nature. They'd clearly discussed this without me, made a group decision about my place in the family, like I was some kind of problem to be solved. Around 3 a.m., lying there staring at the ceiling, something clicked. Fine. They wanted me to step away? I'd step away completely. I got up, grabbed my laptop, and logged into the joint account I'd been managing for 5 years. You know, the one that paid for mom's insulin, helped dad with his mortgage payments, kept Rebecca's apartment afloat when her freelance graphic design work dried up for months at a time. The account that had $3,247 in it at that moment, with my automatic monthly contribution of $1,500 scheduled to hit the next morning. I canceled the auto transfer. Then I transferred the remaining balance to my personal checking account. Then I closed the entire account. The whole process took maybe 10 minutes. 5 years of financial responsibility ended with a few mouse clicks at 3:17 a.m. My phone started going absolutely crazy at sunrise. 89 missed calls by the time I checked it around 8 a.m. Dad left this voicemail where he sounded all shaky and panicked. Son, what happened? The bank flagged everything. Mom's prescription bounced, the mortgage payment failed. Something about insufficient funds. Are you okay? Why would you do this? Call me back immediately. There were text messages flooding in too. Mom, the pharmacy is saying there's no money for my insulin. What's going on? Rebecca, my rent check bounced and my landlord is freaking out. Did something happen to the account? I just texted the group chat. I'm honoring your decision to step away. But here's the thing. They had absolutely no idea what they'd just done. They didn't realize how much I was quietly holding everything together behind the scenes. That message hit me like a betrayal, because I'd been carrying them financially for years without asking for anything back, without even asking for basic respect or gratitude. This is that story, the story of how I became my family's financial life support, and what happened when they decided to cut me out while expecting the money to keep flowing. To really understand why that group message felt like a knife to the chest, I gotta go back about 5 years. That's when everything started falling apart for my family, and somehow I became the designated fixer for problems I didn't create. Rebecca was in bad shape mentally. This was her second hospitalization for severe depression and anxiety in 18 months, and she'd been spiraling for weeks before Dad finally called me. I was at my desk working late on a client proposal when my phone rang at 9 p.m. Dad was crying in a pharmacy parking lot, which immediately sent my anxiety through the roof because Dad never cries. She's not going to make it, son, he said, voice cracking. They won't admit her to the intensive program without upfront payment, and we're completely tapped out. The insurance is fighting everything, saying it's not medically necessary. I don't know what to do. I could hear Mom crying in the background, and Dad trying to hold it together while explaining that Rebecca had been having panic attacks so severe, she couldn't leave her apartment for days at a time. She'd lost her job at the marketing firm because she'd stopped showing up. Her savings were gone. Their savings were gone from helping her through the first crisis. I was 27 then, working insane hours as a business consultant, but making decent money, around $85,000 annually, which felt like a fortune after growing up in a family that always struggled financially. That night, I didn't even hesitate. I logged into my savings account and transferred $15,000 directly to the treatment center. Just like that. My emergency fund, gone in one transaction. Everyone called it a miracle when Rebecca got stable after 3 months in the program. She came home looking healthier, talking about coping mechanisms and therapy techniques. The whole family treated it like divine intervention, but nobody ever mentioned that I made it possible. Nobody offered to pay me back either. Not that I expected it really, but some acknowledgement would have been nice. But that was just the beginning. Within 6 months, Mom got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and her medication costs were astronomical. Dad's hours got cut at the warehouse where he'd worked for 15 years. Some corporate restructuring nonsense that eliminated half the full-time positions. Every time something went wrong, every time another bill came in or another crisis hit, they'd call me. At first it was small stuff. Just $300 for this month, we'll figure it out next time. But then Rebecca moved out and immediately fell behind on her rent. Then Mom needed dental work that insurance wouldn't cover. Then Dad's car needed major repairs, and without it, he couldn't get to work. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Dad called with a proposition. Son, we were thinking, would you be willing to help us set up something more permanent, like a family emergency fund? We hate asking you for money piece by piece like this. I was single, working 80-hour weeks, making good money. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and had no social life because I was always either working or dealing with some family crisis. It made sense, right? They needed stability. I had the means to provide it. So I set up this account in my name and started routing payments through it. Mom's prescriptions, Rebecca's therapy co-pays, Dad's car payment when he fell behind, even their phone bill sometimes when things got tight. When they fell behind on other stuff, they gave me access to all their passwords and account numbers. Not because they trusted me exactly, but because they didn't want to deal with the hassle of managing their own financial disasters. They called me the responsible one, but what they really meant was the convenient one, the one who could be counted on to solve problems with money instead of requiring them to make difficult choices or sacrifices. My life turned into this elaborate ledger of quiet sacrifices. I downgraded my apartment to a cheaper place in a worse neighborhood. I stopped taking vacations. Couldn't afford them anymore. I ate instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for dinner more nights than I want to admit, all so I could keep being their financial safety net. The crazy part? None of them ever asked how I was doing. Not once. When I'd show up to family dinners exhausted from working 7 days a week, they'd barely acknowledge me before diving into discussions about Rebecca's latest crisis, or Dad's job search, or Mom's latest doctor appointment. I became this background figure who existed solely to solve financial problems. I started keeping track of everything in a spreadsheet, not to be petty, but because the amounts were getting so large I needed to understand where my money was going. By year 3, I was contributing over $1,800 monthly to keeping my family afloat, on top of random emergency payments that could be anywhere from $200 to $2,000. The worst part was watching them make the same mistakes over and over. Rebecca would get stable, start freelancing again, then take on way too many projects, burn out, and disappear for weeks. Dad would get temp work, spend the first paycheck on unnecessary stuff, then panic when the rent was due. Mom would skip taking her medication to save money, end up in the emergency room, and create a medical bill that wiped out any savings. But whenever I tried to suggest they needed to change their patterns, I became the bad guy. "You don't understand what it's like to struggle," Rebecca would say. "Easy for you to judge when you have a steady paycheck," Dad would add. Like I hadn't grown up in the same struggling household, like I hadn't worked my way through college while they took on debt, like success had just fallen into my lap. The thing about being everyone's bailout is that it becomes expected incredibly fast. What started as emergency help became routine support, and routine support became entitlement. Rebecca got into a terrible car accident in 2020. Completely not her fault. Some drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned her. She was in the hospital for a week with a broken collarbone and concussion, and while she was recovering, the insurance company started playing games. They wanted to dispute liability, delay payments, generally make her life miserable while she was already dealing with physical therapy and trauma. I paid for the personal injury attorney, $5,000 retainer, just like that. The lawyer was this sharp woman who took one look at the police report and said the case was a slam dunk, but it might take 18 months to settle. Meanwhile, Rebecca couldn't work because of the head injuries and was having panic attacks about driving. Then Rebecca moved in with this guy Tyler, who was definitely bad news. I met him once at a family barbecue and immediately got sketchy vibes. He was one of those guys who talks big about his business ventures, but never seems to have any actual income. He'd order expensive meals when we went out, but somehow never had his wallet. Classic mooch behavior. Rebecca was completely infatuated, though. She moved into his apartment and started talking about how they were going to start a creative agency together. Within 3 months, she discovered he'd been using her credit cards to fund his business ideas and had been cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend. When she finally left him in the middle of the night, she literally fled with just her laptop and a suitcase. I was the one who sent her $1,200 for a hotel and groceries while she looked for a new place. Then I covered her security deposit and first month's rent when she found a studio apartment. Never saw a dime back from any of it, but at least she was safe. They never asked where all this money was coming from. They never saw the spreadsheet I kept to track my own expenses, trying to stay afloat while supporting everyone else. They just expected it, like I was some kind of government assistance program that existed solely for their benefit. The breaking point started around Christmas 2 years ago. I'd been particularly stressed about work. We were in the middle of a major client transition that required me to work basically every waking hour for 6 weeks straight. I was surviving on energy drinks and takeout, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, and pushing myself to the absolute limit. Rebecca texted me on December 23rd, asking if I could buy her new tires for Christmas. Not requesting, asking if I could do it, like it was a given that I would. Her car needed 4 new tires, and she'd gotten a quote for $800. This was right after I'd paid her rent that month because her biggest freelance client had delayed payment until after the new year, or ALV. I was sitting in my office at 11 p.m., working on a presentation that was due the day after Christmas, when her text came through. I just stared at it for a minute, feeling something break inside me. I typed back, "I just paid your rent this month. I can't cover both." The response was immediate. "Seriously? It's Christmas. I'm not asking for anything crazy." Then came the emotional manipulation. "Fine. I guess I'll just drive on bald tires and hope I don't die in a crash. But at least you'll have saved $800. When I didn't respond immediately, she went crying to my parents. Within an hour, I had Dad texting me. Just try to be a little more understanding, son. She's struggling with her mental health after everything with Tyler. You don't know how hard that is. That's when something in me just cracked. I didn't blow up or anything, but I started doing something different. I began documenting everything. Every dollar I sent, every bill I paid, every guilt trip they laid on me, every excuse they made. I created backups, emailed myself bank statements, took screenshots of conversations. Not to hold it over them or anything, but just to remind myself it was real, that I wasn't imagining how much they were draining from me without ever saying thanks, that the sacrifices I was making were significant and meaningful, even if they couldn't see them. Meanwhile, my own life was falling apart. I was working myself to death, had zero savings beyond what I kept for absolute emergencies, couldn't even afford to go on dates because every spare dollar went to them. My apartment was a disaster because I was never home. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 3 years. I was eating dollar store food while paying for their restaurant meals. But when I tried to bring up my own stress, they'd change the subject or remind me how lucky I was to have a good job. Lucky. Like I hadn't earned every dollar through 14-hour days and constant pressure. Like success had just been handed to me while they suffered through no fault of their own. The worst part was watching them waste the money I worked so hard to provide. Rebecca would Venmo me for groceries, then post Instagram stories from expensive restaurants. Dad would ask for help with utilities, then mention buying a new power tool the same week. Mom would need money for medical expenses, then show up wearing new jewelry. I started asking for receipts, and they acted like I was being controlling. You don't trust us? Rebecca asked when I requested proof that the $300 I'd sent had actually gone to her therapist. We're not your employees, Dad said, when I asked him to forward me the actual utility bill instead of just telling me the amount. But they had no problem treating me like their personal bank account. Last month, everything came to a head in the most ridiculous way possible. Rebecca had been doing better. Therapy was helping. She'd landed a few good freelance contracts, and she'd been consistently making her rent for 3 months straight. I was actually starting to feel optimistic that maybe, finally, the family was getting back on stable ground. Then she texted the family group at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Hey, I know money's tight, but could the fund cover a wellness retreat in Colorado? It's for my mental health recovery, and my therapist thinks it would really help. I was in a client meeting when the message came through, so I didn't see it right away. When I checked my phone an hour later, there was already a whole conversation thread about it. A wellness retreat for $3,200, including airfare, accommodation, meals, and something called holistic healing workshops. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see what everyone else would say first, because surely someone would point out how absurd this was. And Dad, the same guy I'd pulled out of overdraft twice last year, the same guy whose mortgage I'd been supplementing for 18 months, replied, "Sounds like something you really need, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do." Mom added a heart emoji and wrote, "Whatever helps you heal, honey." That's when it hit me like a freight train. They didn't just think they could use me, they expected it. They thought the fund was communal property, like I was some kind of silent donor who existed just to make their problems disappear. They were discussing spending over $3,000 of my money like it was their money. I sat in my car outside the client's office, staring at my phone, feeling this rage building up that I'd never experienced before. This wasn't an emergency. This wasn't medical treatment or rent or food. This was a vacation, an expensive vacation that cost more than most people make in a month, being discussed casually like it was a reasonable use of emergency funds. But the real kicker came 2 nights before that group message. We had our monthly family video call, something Mom had insisted on during the pandemic that somehow became permanent. Usually these calls were just everyone updating each other on their lives. But this one felt different from the start. I'd been excited to share some good news for once. I'd just landed this major client at work, a Fortune 500 company that wanted our firm to handle their entire digital transformation project. It was huge, career-defining huge, the kind of contract that would set me up for a promotion and finally give me some financial breathing room. "Guys, I've got some amazing news," I started, but Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "Sorry, son, can we circle back to Rebecca's housing situation first? She doesn't feel safe in her current place, and we really need to figure out next steps." Rebecca jumped in. "Yeah, there was another break-in in my building last week, and my landlord isn't doing anything about security. I've been having panic attacks every time I hear noise in the hallway. They wanted to move her to a better neighborhood. A much better neighborhood. We spent the next 45 minutes looking at apartment listings online, with everyone chiming in about granite countertops and in-unit laundry and gym access. Places that were $800 to $1,200 more per month than her current studio. When I finally managed to bring up my work news again, Mom said, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and immediately pivoted back to discussing Rebecca's moving timeline. That's when I said it, calmly, without raising my voice. Maybe it's time someone else stepped up to help with this. The silence was ice cold. You could have heard a pin drop through the video call, like I'd said something offensive just by suggesting I shouldn't be the only one fixing everything. Mom jumped in first. "Honey, you know we would if we could, but you're the only one who's really stable right now." Stable. Another word for useful. Another way of saying the only one with money we can take. Rebecca started crying. Actual tears. "I can't believe you're making this about money when I'm talking about my safety. I thought family was supposed to support each other. Dad tried to play peacemaker. Now, Rebecca, your brother has done a lot for us. But son, you have to understand. She's vulnerable right now. We can't just abandon her when she needs help. Abandon her. Like setting boundaries was abandonment. Like requiring other adults to solve their own problems was cruelty." I ended the call early that night, claiming I had work to catch up on. But I sat in my home office for hours afterward, staring at my financial spreadsheet. $87,421.13 over 5 years. Nearly $90,000 of my money. Given freely, no questions asked, no gratitude expected. And they thought I was being selfish for suggesting that maybe, just maybe, someone else could contribute something. 2 days later came that group message. "We think it's best if you step away for now." I realized later that the call had been a setup. They'd already decided to cut me out, probably so they could make financial decisions without my input. They wanted me gone so they could approve Rebecca's wellness retreat and figure out how to pay for her apartment upgrade without dealing with my negativity. What they didn't realize was that cutting me out meant cutting off the money too. In their minds, those were apparently two separate things. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. The fallout was immediate and absolutely brutal. Within 36 hours of closing the account, the overdraft notices started hitting like an avalanche. Mom's pharmacy called her Wednesday morning saying her prescription payment had been declined. The mortgage company called Dad at work, in front of his coworkers, asking about the failed automatic payment. Rebecca's landlord sent her a text about the bounced rent check with a photo of the NSF notice from his bank. But the phone calls to me were relentless. My phone was buzzing every few minutes with increasingly panicked messages. Mom called 17 times in 2 hours. Rebecca left this voicemail that started as a whisper and ended with her screaming, "Why would you do this? You knew I needed that payment by Sunday. My landlord is threatening eviction. You're going to make me homeless." The texts were even worse. Dad sent voice note after voice note like a man completely losing it. "Son, the mortgage bounced. The bank hit us with a $35 NSF fee, and now we're short for next month too. I thought you handled the insurance payment, but that bounced too. The car insurance lapsed, and now they're saying we need to pay double to reinstate it. What did you do to the utilities account? ComEd is saying we're 3 months behind, but I thought you were covering that. The bank locked our checking account. They said there were multiple red flags from all the failed transfers. You need to fix this right now. Fix this!" Like I had broken something instead of just stepping back like they explicitly asked me to do. The desperation in their voices was something I'd never heard before. For 5 years, I'd been quietly preventing these exact situations from happening. They'd never experienced the full weight of their financial choices because I'd always been there as a safety net. Now they were free-falling and suddenly realized how far up they'd been. Mom left this heartbreaking voicemail. "Honey, I don't understand what's happening. I went to pick up my insulin and they said the account was closed. I'm scared to eat anything because I don't have my medication. Please call me back, please. I raised you better than this." That last line was like a knife. I raised you better than this. Like basic financial boundaries were a moral failing on my part. They called a family Zoom meeting for Thursday evening, and the second I joined, I could see it was an ambush. Mom's face was pale and drawn. Dad was pacing behind her like a caged animal. Rebecca had tears streaming down her cheeks. Aunt Carol was there too, sitting ramrod straight in her pearls, looking like we were in family court. Even Uncle Jim was on the call, which never happened unless someone had died. "Why did you do this to us?" Rebecca started before I'd even gotten my camera on. "You just abandoned us after everything we've been through together. After everything we mean to each other." I took a breath and tried to stay calm. "You sent me a group message telling me to step away from the family. I'm respecting your wishes." "We didn't mean financially," Mom interjected. "We just thought you needed some space from Rebecca's drama. We never said anything about the money." Actually, I replied, you said I should step away from the family. The money was part of my involvement with the family. If you wanted me out of family decisions but still wanted my financial support, you should have been more specific. Dad jumped in. Don't be ridiculous. You know what we meant. No, I really don't. Because you made a group decision about me without including me in the conversation. You decided I was bad for Rebecca's mental health, bad for family dynamics, whatever. So I stepped away completely. That's when Rebecca really lost it. Everything you've done for us? You mean after I paid your rent, funded your treatment, covered your emergencies, and got treated like garbage for saying no to your wellness retreat? The room went quiet except for Rebecca's sobbing. You act like we never appreciated you, Mom said quietly. But we did. We do. Your family. Really? I said. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? When's the last time anyone offered to help me with anything? When's the last time anyone even said thank you? More silence. That's when I shared my screen and showed them the spreadsheet. 5 years of financial data, every payment, every bill, every emergency transfer tracked with obsessive detail. Monthly contributions, emergency payments, insurance premiums, medical bills, rent supplements, car repairs, legal fees, utilities, groceries, therapy copays, prescription costs. The running total, $87,421.13. Dead silence. I watched their faces as they processed the number. Dad's mouth was actually hanging open. Mom looked like she was going to be sick. Rebecca had stopped crying and was just staring at the screen. You've been keeping tabs on us? Mom said, horrified. No, I replied. I've been tracking my own expenses. I've been trying to understand why I can't afford to go on vacation, or buy myself decent furniture, or save for retirement. This is where my money has been going. Aunt Carol spoke up for the first time. $87,000? How is that possible? Very easily, I said. $15,000 for Rebecca's treatment, $8,000 for Dad's mortgage supplements, $12,000 for Mom's medical expenses, $6,000 for Rebecca's apartment deposits and rent supplements, $5,000 for legal fees, $10,000 for car repairs and insurance. The list goes on and on. Dad tried the guilt trip. We're family. Family helps family. You can't put a price tag on that. You're right, I said. Family helps family. But this hasn't been helping. It's been enabling. You've all made the same financial mistakes over and over because you knew I'd catch you when you fell. You never had to learn from consequences because there weren't any consequences. Rebecca found her voice again. So what? You're just going to let us lose everything? You're going to let Mom go without her medication? You're going to let me become homeless? I'm going to let you all handle your own problems like adults, I said. The same way I handle mine. But you don't have problems like ours, Mom protested. You have a good job. You're educated. You don't have mental health issues. I work 80 hours a week to afford my life and yours too, I interrupted. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. I live in a crappy apartment and eat ramen for dinner so I can pay your bills. You think I don't have stress? You think I don't have problems? The difference is, I solve them myself instead of calling someone else to fix them with money. The call ended with Rebecca sobbing, Mom saying I'd changed and that money had made me cold, and Dad promising they'd figure something out without me. Money hadn't made me cold. Being used had made me smart. I thought cutting them off would be the end of it, but it got worse. Way, way worse. 10 days after that Zoom call, I got an email from a random Gmail account with no subject line. Just a bunch of screenshots attached. Rebecca's eviction notice, dated for the following week. Power company warnings for both my parents' house and Rebecca's apartment. Denied credit applications. Looks like they'd been trying to get loans, credit cards, anything to replace my financial support. They were falling apart fast, and somehow it was still my fault. The email was unsigned, but I'm pretty sure it was from Aunt Carol, based on the passive-aggressive tone of the file names, what you caused .jpg, and this is what stepping away looks like .png. Then Mom showed up at my office on a Friday afternoon. I was in a client meeting when my assistant knocked on the door, looking uncomfortable. Your mother is here, she whispered. She says it's an emergency. Mom was sitting in the lobby looking like death warmed over, pale, shaking, clutching this manila envelope like it contained her last hope. She'd lost weight, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had this desperate look in her eyes that I'd never seen before. I didn't know where else to go, she said when I brought her into a conference room. Your dad's sleeping on the couch because we can't afford the electric bill and the house is freezing. Rebecca hasn't left her room in days because she's too ashamed to face her landlord. We've applied for assistance programs, but everything takes weeks, and we need help now. She opened the envelope and spread out a stack of bills like she was dealing cards. past due notices, final warnings, disconnection threats. The total was staggering. Over $4,000 in immediate needs just to keep them from losing utilities and housing. Then she played her last card. I raised you. I gave you life. I changed your diapers, stayed up nights when you were sick, worked double shifts to pay for your school clothes. This is how you repay us? By watching us suffer when you could help? I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity was breathtaking. You gave me life and then spent 30 years convincing me I owed you for it. You raised me to believe that family means sacrificing everything for people who won't sacrifice anything for you. That's not fair, she said, tears starting to flow. We would help you if we could. When? I interrupted. When have you ever helped me? When I was working 3 jobs to pay for college? When I was eating pasta every night so I could send you grocery money? When I haven't been on a date in 2 years because every spare dollar goes to your family emergencies? She didn't have an answer for that, but the real bombshell came a week later. I was at home on a Saturday morning, finally enjoying a leisurely breakfast for the first time in years, when a thick envelope arrived via certified mail. Bank letterhead marked Urgent Fraud Investigation. Inside were 20 pages of documentation about a business loan application that had been flagged by their fraud department. Someone had applied for $80,000 using my name, social security number, and the tax ID from the family fund account. The business was called Rebecca Grace Recovery Services, LLC, and according to the paperwork, it was a consulting company that provided mental health services to corporate clients. Complete fiction. The signature on the application looked like mine, but was just different enough that a handwriting expert would be able to spot it as a forgery. Mom and Dad were listed as co-signers, which meant they were directly involved in this scheme. If I hadn't closed that account when I did, the loan might have gone through. They'd apparently been planning this for weeks, maybe months. They weren't just using me. They were trying to frame me for a loan I never agreed to take. The whole stepping away from the family thing wasn't spontaneous hurt feelings. It was a calculated setup. Cut me from the fun discussions, but keep my name and social security number attached. Take the money, and let me deal with the legal and financial consequences. I spent that entire weekend filing reports with everyone I could think of. The bank's fraud department, the police, the IRS, the state attorney general's office, the credit reporting agencies. Every keystroke felt like therapy. Every form I filled out was another step toward protecting myself from people who were supposed to love me. The police detective assigned to the case was this older guy who looked like he'd seen everything twice. Family fraud is more common than you'd think, he told me during our first meeting. Usually it's parents stealing from kids, but sometimes it goes the other way. Adult children taking advantage of elderly parents. This situation, though, family members trying to use someone as a financial resource while simultaneously setting them up for fraud. That's a new one for me. He walked me through what would happen next. They'd investigate the loan application, interview everyone involved, possibly press charges depending on what they found. He advised me to freeze my credit, change my banking passwords, and document every interaction I'd had with my family regarding money. You did the right thing closing everything when you did, he said. If this loan had gone through, you'd be on the hook for $80,000 plus interest, and proving you didn't authorize it would have been a nightmare. When the investigators contacted my parents, Dad called me that evening crying, not apologizing, crying because they got caught. His voice was shaking as he tried to explain, "We were desperate, son. Really desperate. Rebecca was going to be homeless. Your mother was rationing her insulin. I thought I might lose the house. We thought if we could just get enough to stabilize everything, we'd find a way to pay it back before you ever found out. You thought you'd commit fraud in my name and I'd never find out?" I said, incredulous. "We didn't see it as fraud. We saw it as borrowing from family. You've always been there for us, and we figured this was just a more formal way of getting help." "A more formal way? You forged my signature on a loan application. You used my social security number without permission. That's not borrowing from family. That's identity theft." He was quiet for a long moment. "I know how it looks, but we never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to survive. By destroying my credit and potentially making me liable for a loan I didn't take? What if I hadn't caught this? What if the bank hadn't flagged it? I could have been ruined financially and never known why." That was the last conversation we had. Because what do you say to someone who thinks loving you means they're entitled to steal from you? It's been almost a year now since I closed that fund. Since the 3 a.m. phone calls and 89 missed voicemails. Since they tried to forge my name on an $80,000 loan application. And I can honestly say, I've never been happier. The first few months were rough. Not gonna lie. I felt guilty constantly, second-guessing myself every day. I'd wake up wondering if Mom had been able to afford her medication, if Rebecca was sleeping in her car, if Dad had lost the house. The programming of 30 years doesn't just disappear overnight.